What's up, YouTube? I am sitting here and going to the World Summit this week, Symbolic World Summit, and just wanted to see if there's anybody out there in TLC world that would have any thoughts about it, and if you can let me know if the stream worked well. Yeah, I'm trying to get used to doing this live stream thing. I haven't done very many. Um, Today, Jonathan Peugeot announced that Jordan Hall was going to be there, and so I thought, well, I didn't kind of thought. He had told me, actually, Jordan had told me that he was going to be there. We talked about it briefly. Um, so that was kind of like big for this little not big person. I'm excited to meet him. I'm excited the opportunity to meet Graham Grizz in real life and Justin Wells from Justin's Morning Coffee. Those are the people that I know that are going, that I've kind of found that were going. Found out this week, I guess. So thanks to this medium, when I signed up for the to go to the conference, I didn't know anybody that was going. I thought last I was saw that Grizz was going to be going down, and since then there have been several people that I've encountered on here and talked with that are going to be there. I honestly don't know what to expect because I feel like a lightweight, but I feel like I get a lot of the gist of things. But really it's kind of a just like an opportunity for people that are in the space, in the sphere, to kind of get together. And I think that's kind of more of the deal. It's one of these embodied experiences. Jonathan Peugeot's kind of described it as a something like his birthday present, something that he's just excited to see people that he loves. And then with the announcement that Jordan Peterson was going to be there, um, who knows how long they had kind of had that in the books or whatever, or they were, even if they were just trying to get it to work out. But um, they're probably pretty excited to hang out now that they've been friends for going on almost 10 years, since all of this stuff has been rolling around, really starting back in like 2016. And I think that's why it makes sense to go, is because that's around the time I encountered Jordan Peterson. And um, in my conversation with Jordan Hall, he mentioned an early video about Jonathan Peugeot and Jordan Peterson talking about Keck symbolism. And I don't remember if that was the one that I was watching that back then. And someone may be able to help me out with this if anyone watches this back. But what I remember Jonathan Peugeot talking to Jordan about in one of their early YouTube conversations was he was talking about symbolism, and he was talking about the symbolism of a groom carrying uh, carrying the bride across the threshold of a house after they were married. And I don't even remember what symbolically it represented, but I remember, I think that was in my mind. Whatever he was connecting it to was like my first kind of um, realization of whatever Jonathan Peugeot was talking to Jordan Peterson about, like symbolic meaning. That made sense, probably because it was like a biblical reference about marriage. And us evangelicals, we like our biblical marriage. uh, but yeah, that it goes really far back, and I've been kind of a I don't know. I have like I see that one person's watching, and that one person might be my wife. There were two, but no one's hopped in on the chat that I can see. So, um, if you're out there, let me know if the stream is coming through clear, if you can hear me. And yeah, I'm just trying to see. Yeah. What's up, Brad? Brad, can you hear me okay? I'm trying to see if how this works. Make it good. Okay, great. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, I'm just talking about. I'm going to Symbolic World Summit this week, and I was hopping on here to see if anyone. It's kind of late, but I was going to see if anyone was had any ideas, or if you're not going, if there was something you thought maybe I could, I don't know, interact with or think about while I'm there. Just have a conversation about it. Um, yeah, so I have this distinct memory of listening to that one of those early Jordan Peterson Peugeot um, podcasts about it. Man, so anyways, I'm excited to meet him and have a chance to kind of pick his brain a little bit, know the non. I don't know. He's probably gonna like mess with me with my feeble mind, and that'll be funny. He can find out. He can try to sniff out if I'm really a secret agent sent to infiltrate this little flotilla of meaning. Um, Paul was going. He said Paul Vanderklay said he's not going, and it would be great to meet him. But I imagine he was saying it'd take like a week of time to get out there, and I was thinking about trying to do like coast to coast conferencing. But the time commitment becomes a little bit more intense with flights, and I live in Central Time, and it's relatively easy to kind of hop one way or the other, just a couple of hours. So I've had a lot of angst thinking about this week. Um, I've been in like the conference, kind of even some small scale conference stuff before. Brad, do you want to hop on here and talk about symbolic wedding? You'd love to meet Martin Shaw. I'm looking for conversation, Brad. So I'm gonna drop the link in here, and then you can hop on and talk about um, what you like about Martin Shaw. Hop on in if you can. Yeah, Martin Shaw. I think he is captivating. He's captivating the minds of many people right now. His unique makeup. I think what's interesting about Martin Shaw. I think what's interesting about a lot of this is that it's it's all these people that have this kind of low church evangelical. He's like almost 50 or around 50 or something, and his dad's like an evangelical pastor, and has a brother that's a pastor, and it's like, and he's in orthodoxy now. But the thing that And I was wanting to have more of this conversation with Lance the other night about liturgy, and even this whole conference, like Jonathan Peugeot, Richard Rowland, like, which I think he came from a more intensely kind of fundamentalist background. And I don't know exactly the details of Jonathan's background, but all of these low church evangelicals moving into the high church, they're bringing with them so many sensibilities, no matter how refined their and deep their kind of um, their understanding. You bring yourself and where you come from. And I see this like on the reverse, where like I have family members that came like Catholic background into evangelicalism 20, 30 years ago. Yet they bring and they long for things from their old church culture, and that was an interesting stream. Luke had kind of a letter to evangelicals or something like that the other day, like a week or two ago, and I watched his Peter Enns uh, interview that he had, and he said he never went back to evangelical church after that, or the Reformed like Baptisty church that he had been a part of. When that whole world, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, deconstructs, disappears, rug pull, like that's so intense, and it seems like he's maybe far enough out from it now that he can kind of look back on it with some like look at find some of the gold. And he was kind of making mention in some of his comments on my interview with Jordan Hall about how he was so surprised that Jordan was able to find like something he felt free in or intellectually satisfied in within like a lower church setting. And I mean that's a big part of my story. Like the town I live in has a uh, liberal arts college, and our town's like 10,000 people, and so it has brought interesting people that into our community that wouldn't be there otherwise without this college. And what I mean by that is people that aren't necessarily conservative in a small town in Arkansas, people that have traveled the world, or maybe they take a sabbatical and they go teach in India for 6 months, and these are the people that are in this small community. They're, political science professors and philosophy professors and music professors, and it's a has a historical Christian uh, heritage. So it's like there's theological people there. Um, and he seems like he's like brushing up against people. Of course, he lives like 15, 20 minutes away from Asheville. So there's, city folk close to where he's at in the small town. And I think that's a reality. Um, Brad said he'd love to meet Martin Shaw. I guess now we're back down to one viewer. I don't know who's still out there. Hop into the chat, and I'm going to the Symbolic World Summit. Odds you like Neil? Hey buddy, it's you, me, and Brad. I guess hop on, man. If you got it's, I know it's late. I don't know. I think you're in like Pennsylvania. No, where you're like, I don't know where you said you're at. Um, who would you most like to see, Neil, at Symbolic World Summit? Most like to hear from or be an embodied presence with? Brad's still here. Yeah, it's late. As you can see, I am in a hotel room. Part of my job involves travel every week, so like I spend the night in a hotel. That's why some of my videos are kind of like, where's he now? But yeah, let's see, Neil. Who Neil most like to see at Symbolic World Summit? From the little I have encountered Neil. Neil's Catholic. He likes philosophy. I don't know who's going to be there. That's There's the theology guys. Um, I can't remember the name of their YouTube channel that they have that are they're obviously like 95% of the people on platform are orthodoxy, but probably Peugeot. Yeah, this is kind of his thing. Um, yeah, I was saying earlier that it's kind of a. He said something like this is going to be like his birthday. He's so excited because it's basically just he's putting on something just to get all of his friends together, all the people he thinks are interesting together. It's also a big kind of orthodox, you know, party. But I'm going. I'm gonna meet Grizz. What should I say to Grizz? I don't know what Grizz. I don't know what Grizz thinks of me. Yeah, let's see. This is a random question, Christian. But did you ever speak in tongues or others in your church? No, I've never been a. Well, I can't say I was never been a charismatic. My dad was very much into the charismatic movement, kind of starting in the late '80s and into the early '90s, and he was a youth pastor at a church in our town that was charismatic when I was pretty young, like between 7 and 10. And I was around some of that. I saw some of that. I even had kind of like some kind of presence, like in a once or twice that I felt something that felt real and tangible that I kind of responded to, but I never spoke in tongues. Um, and then church wise, I don't go to I haven't been a part of a charismatic church since we went to a Southern Baptist church when I was about 10 to 12, and then my dad full time pastored at a church from like 12 to 13 or 14. And that was a mildly charismatic church. There were like people that practiced it, but we didn't really practice it in worship on Sunday mornings. And then after that, we went back to a Southern Baptist church, and then I got my education, like a Southern Baptist theological education, undergrad, and then I was at a church for that I actually was at partly in high school and then after college till 2016, and it was interdenominational, but it wasn't cessational, which means like it didn't not believe in the gifts, but we did not like practice them. And there wasn't really a big charismatic flavor in the church, but it attracted more like mainline and Baptists, and some Catholics, because we continued to adopt like more liturgy into like the modern worship setting. That's a long answer to your question. I guess you could say no. Others in your church. But yeah, my dad would say he speaks in tongues. Yeah, in that conversation I had with Kale, we kind of touched on that right at the very end about charismatic Catholics. I know a guy who would probably consider himself a charismatic Anglican or Episcopal. That actually he did attend my old church, um, and he told me a story one time that they were in like a prayer group with this charismatic. I guess he was like an Anglican priest or bishop, and he said he like laid hands on him, like to pray for him, like on his head, and he remembers like just like having some kind of visual experience, you could say. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I think that the charismatic Anglicans and Catholics, the thing, my thing about that, I believe, is because I remember it was probably over a decade ago. It may have been Ratzinger, was reaching out to charismatic churches. You might could look this up. This has been a long time since I saw this. I say it's Ratzinger. I can't remember Ratzinger's papal name, but he was trying to bridge some relationships with the charismatic church, and the reason for this, I believe, just not through a lot of reading, but from my like perspective, is that charismatics, in like the Pentecostal sense, and then basically anybody that believes in the real presence of the Eucharist. So Benedict, that's right. Anybody that believes in the real presence of the Eucharist and a Pentecostal that believes in the real presence of the Holy Spirit actually have quite a bit in common. As opposed to like everything like in between, like a more secular culture and belief systems within Christianity. You know, you have groups that are completely cessational, a lot of low church Baptist types. And then, but then even in like Methodism, you have, thanks, mostly not working. Come back. It's just a bunch of it's just a bunch of rambling. But the, cessationalists and then Baptists that wouldn't necessarily ask questions mostly. Yeah. Yeah, ask some questions mostly. I'm just here hanging in my travel hotel. Um, Let me see, back to the tongues thing. Yeah, so there's Methodists that believe in like, even though they might, a Methodist could, there could be like a highly sacramental Methodist. There's also parts of Methodism that are charismatic and are more into like that charismatic, the movement of like the Holy Spirit. And so I think that there's actually like a really close relationship with believing in a real presence. Um, and I think that's where you get a connection in Catholicism that is connected to, okay, real presence in the Eucharist, okay, real presence in worship or manifestations of tongues or feeling or something. And I think that I personally have like I'm a little guarded with charismatic, not probably because of the culture, that part of the culture, but because of more like dispensational, end times stuff that is sometimes connected to low church stuff. I found an article, Cardinal Ratzinger on Catholic Charismatic Renewal. I like Ratzinger, and I was telling Kale this. Neil, do you know who Scott Hahn is? He was like an evangelical convert to Catholicism. When I was on staff at a church, our associate pastor was like secretly, should I be Catholic? Should I be Anglican? Should I be, like, and this was 10 years ago. Yeah, Scott, the big thing about Scott Hahn is just that he's like he has the conversation of like evangelical to Catholicism converts like 10 years ago, where I don't know much of your story, Neil. From what I gather just from briefly was that you were maybe atheistic and then came into Catholicism, and I don't know what your upbringing was like, but that's not really the space that Scott Hahn was operating in. Scott Hahn was connecting with people who were already serious about their Christianity, but they were moving maybe out from like Baptist to Catholic and helping them walk through papal authority or veneration of Mary, those types of things that are some of the big, um, stopping points for some evangelicals to get into Catholicism or Orthodoxy for that matter. But yeah, so much for talking about symbolic world. I this really that those questions, Neil, like honestly are like a I've spent a lot of time thinking about no, it's okay. I don't have a real agenda. I was just actually just trying to like get connected, do something on a night where I had some time. Um, I've got a podcast that I'm gonna push out tomorrow, and I was trying to get past that so that I could like hang out a little bit, and I wanted to see it, but it was a little bit late, and so if people were gonna get on, that might have had more like discussion about the stuff. But the talking about these kinds of things uh, have been an ongoing conversation in my mind for, well, I mean, probably since late high school about the relationship between basically the high church and the low church, because that was like what I married into, and I so my wife Catholic Lutheran, me Baptist Charismatic, and I was doing ministry, so it was like this was, and it wasn't in my wife's family, like her parents were, they weren't cultural Catholic, they were very like, they actually were evangelicals within those structures, like they were, I would call them evangelical Lutherans, not like the Elka evangelicals, but they were like listening to a lot of evangelical people, but they went to a Lutheran church and because of the liturgy and the um, higher view of the sacraments. And I was this, rock and roll guy. So I was like, how do these things work together? And um, so that's really been a big part of my journey, and why I think it doesn't. Um, well, I just hopped up to 7 people watching. I think mostly not working like went into Grimm's to the disc to Broken Clock Tower and said, "Hey, go check this out." That's what I think of. What's up, people? I'm talking to Neil about what's up. What's up? I was talking to Neil about charismatic Catholicism, speaking in tongues, and then my lifelong journey of like connecting with the high church and the low church. It's been basically my life. So, yeah, but if anyone wants to hop on, I'm learning charismatic stuff from Christian, which I'm not even a charismatic. I have some really good friends that went to Bethel. They're from my hometown. They went out to Reading and did their spiritual. There's like a certificate program uh, that they do for like spiritual ministry, and I'm very curious about what will be in the talk on speaking in tongues. Is there a talk on speaking in tongues? I didn't know about that one. I was no, I'm not. Me too, man. Um, unless your nightwear is not like much clothing. Pajoti today. Oh, really? I didn't catch. Well, I guess like the Babel thing, the Tower of Babel would like. I mean, there was Pentecost, which is the the first New Testament emerge of like everybody being able to hear each other in their own tongue. but they kind of were hitting on the Tower of Babel. There was some interesting stuff. I don't know if some of the stuff that Roland was pulling from was from the Ethiopian Bible that has more information about Abraham, which I found so fascinating. But it's something about that Abraham was able to recapture the speaking of actual Hebrew. Peugeot signs. Okay, I get it. There it is. I'm learning my StreamYard tools here. That's fun. Mills, tell me what you mean by what he was talking about specifically uh, about tongues. I that was the part I listened to. I listened to most of the Tower of Babel one today. But it really does kind of go into this a lot of stuff that Luke Thompson was talking about a few weeks ago about the breath and the speaking of words, and even like what is magic. Here it is. It was a bit ambiguous, but there's quite a bit of talk about this issue of tongues and tongues of fire, and that Richard Rowland would do a presentation at the summit. Yeah, and what's interesting about Richard Rowland is he's like the most dry person when it comes to tongue. He probably like analyzes tongues from like a distance. Yeah, he doesn't strike me as the speaking tongue person, but I could see him very much being interested in uh, the kind of story around tongues. Neil, what brought on your question initially about how it was like a charismatic church? Do I fit the bill, the charismatic bill, the unkempt, out in the wilderness types? I don't know. Yeah, I think that the Tower of Babel and Pentecost, like that's kind of had a conversation. I had an interesting conversation with a Pentecostal type person today too at work. It was very fascinating. It was a really beautiful conversation, and time doing that. Hmm. Yeah, it's a there's like there's a cultural divide in some ways of how to like even communicate. When I was listening to Strange Theology talk to Kale today on their podcast, and every time that Strange Theology, Pete was saying the body of Christ in the way that he kind of gets this Southern preacher voice where he says God and things like that. Uh, Pete was saying the body of Christ, and I kept thinking, and when Kale is hearing the word body of Christ, like he's thinking Eucharist. Not exactly, but that's the kind of thing I think when you're trying to communicate with charismatics and you're not from that world, you could say something and you think you mean one thing and they hear like something else and vice versa, which is interesting as we're talking about the Tower of Babel. But let's see. Mills, I was reading Corinthians. It seems like the way they describe speaking in tongues was much like a dialogical practice. I may be projecting a bit onto what Peugeot and Richard. Well, I know that there's the supposed to be, and I don't know the scripture reference. It may be there in Corinthians that there's if someone says a word in tongues, that there's supposed to be someone there to interpret the word. I always think of prophesying and edifying others in church versus oneself. Yeah. I was a kid when I experienced this stuff happening, and I think that my experience, it was in a non-denominational, it wasn't even within like Pentecostalism. And I think that we kind of left because my dad thought he was experiencing like manipulative kind of stuff. So I can see how that could come in, but I think that there's situations where there is really healthy, loving, parts in a culture that where that happens, where there is the building up. So yeah, well, that's interesting that makes sense though. And Richard Rowland, I didn't catch all of it. I was kind of busy at work, halfway listening, but the definitely the Tower of Babel is going to play against. Yes, I've never experienced it, so I'm curious at a distance. Yeah, I think it's the same kind of thing where if you're really comfortable in like a cathedral or the Catholic liturgy and mass, like the idea of going into a church building that doesn't look or feel anything like that, where the liturgy is much less formal and structured from the outside. Some of it's actually very highly formal, like stuff. Some of the stuff that Bethel does is highly produced. They have like opportunities and windows for like freedom, but like musically and how the production's done, a lot of it is some of it's highly structured, but on all the levels. Apologies, gotta run. Pray for you on your journey. Thanks, man. All right. Well, I know it's late. I've been on here about 37 minutes. And I don't know. Had some people, still a few people out there. Any other thoughts about Symbolic World? We've been talking about Charismatic Church. I think the danger in the charismatic practices is chasing a feeling and experience. I think that's the danger anywhere. What's up, Pete Kayfabe? Someone needs to explain the etiology of kayfabe for me. I understand that it's like about wrestling being fake and everybody knows it's fake, but I'm that's relatively new language for me. But so much of the idea of like feeling God's presence, like, and then like chasing after that, I think that there's something to that. I think on the flip side, like I got into a space where I was like, I'm gonna quit chasing that, and then I even quit expecting there to be anything in a way. So I don't know. Can we pursue symbolism too much? People asking me questions like I know things. I think as a discussion, yes, I've thought about that. I've thought about even as I've like watched when I see the excitement, say if somebody like Richard Rowland, which if he sees this and thinks I'm a jerk, I'm not trying to be, but like how you can turn everything into that. Um, I think that that's also the same trap that highly dispensational people fall into when it comes to everything is a sign of the end times. And everything is, what is up? Teo, I know you'll hop in. We've been waiting to have a chat. Um, I'm assuming. Um, but yeah, I think that anything like that, like I would say though, like Brad, you're saying, I feel like that's happening. I think it's important though that to recapture like a vision for something, like pendulums just swing. That's what they do, and so this is a big pendulum swing. And in the same way that I would say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like what's called like the Jesus or the gospel centered movement um, was, it made everything in scripture point to Christ. And I was having a conversation with Justin Wells from Justin's Morning Coffee about how, and we both have been in like that kind of Reformed Presbyterian stream for a long time, that it almost creates a staleness because then every story is just about the same thing. And even in like the Jesus Storybook Bible, which is like a Reformed children's Bible, like at the end of every story, it says, every story whispers his name. And I think you could say, okay, whisper doesn't necessarily mean like it's like proclaiming that, um, but I do think that it does create a staleness, and there was almost a reaction from like, well, this story about Samson or this story about Abraham isn't really about Abraham, it's about Christ. And I'd look back now and it'd be like, well, actually, I think the story is about this character. And so um, I think that it's healthy. Apophenia, yeah, that was that was what Jordan Hall mentioned that word in his conversation on the Aubrey Marcus podcast. I googled the same thing, and it's like basically he was kind of pointing that towards what happened with QAnon, like where you're looking for like the thing beneath the thing and everything. And I think it's good to have like grounded people in your life if you're like prone to that, to like say yeah and maybe not. Maybe it's just another day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That was and I grew up in a kind of a home that like was looking for devils around every corner kind of thing. So I think that was part of that for my life. Unmotivated seeing of connections. Yeah, dude, Teo, if you're still rolling, hop in. Let's talk for a minute if you've got. If you're still on. This is a VNA sesh, guys. VNA, virtually not alone. Hit the branding. I don't have. I have my one branding video. Let's see. What else, guys? Apophenia. Um, can we pursue symbolism too much? I think definitely. But I think we're also like in a season where like if you're in this season or you're in this space and every Peugeot video comes up, you're like you've watched 200 hours of Peugeot content, then yeah, I mean you maybe like maybe you need to go and like maybe whoever, maybe it is good to then go back and look at some kind of Christological connection from an Old Testament story or something versus like this could mean this and the whole history. But what I think is happening is kind of reclaiming or reconnecting to a more mythological and medieval like view on the scripture, and I think that we probably are long overdue for that. And for that to really permeate the culture, you have to have people that are like experts and and just completely like get it on a super deep level that they're able then to take that, bring it up to the top, and then let that kind of disseminate down. That was one of the early conversations I had in this space on a stream, was about like, there he is, there he is, boom,
Yo, yo.
it's you and me, man.
How you
What
doing, bro?
time? I'm good. What time are you rolling in the UK right now?
4:30 in the AM.
Oh damn, you're what do you? How do you like operate, man? Because you're like always on streams at like crazy times.
Yeah, my I don't sleep a lot, but I take naps, so I make up for it on other bases.
I used to work night shift, so this would have been handy back in that day. We could.
Oh my gosh, night! I tried at uni. I was doing warehouse work, and I did a night shift a few times, and oh my days, the worst thing ever. I always doesn't matter how much I sleep before the night shift. By 3 a.m., I'm done.
Yeah, yeah. That's what it kind of boils down to towards like after the after whatever the newness of it or something wears off. It's like yeah, 3 or 4 in the morning on night shift. You're like doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So what I don't know anything about you, man, other than like this.
yeah. This is the medium that we play in. That we can develop relationship with people that we have a lot of common interest with, but know nothing about the particular
Yeah.
individual. What would you like to know?
How old are you?
29 years old.
Okay.
Was
And
the first stream you you guys were there on
what?
my birthday. You guys were there on my birthday at the
That's
Estuary.
right. That's right.
So
So you just turned 29.
fresh 29 years old.
You're my brother's age. I have a brother that's 10 years younger than me.
Oh, wow, you're 39. I did not know
Well,
that.
I'll be 39 end of the month.
End of this month.
Yeah. Yeah, end of March. You know.
I was gonna say, are you a leap? It's a leap year. You're a leap baby.
Yeah, that's I thought that was interesting that they did symbolic world on leap year. It's like there's probably some symbolic meaning to that.
There's always some symbolic meaning to everything, Christian. Have you not watched enough visual to learn that?
Oh,
Patterns.
let's see. We'll pop this guy up. I often find myself feeling there's a fine line between discussing symbolism and dismantling our understanding of reality. I think the latter can be dangerous. You know what that makes me think of is the same thing as like materialism, like breaking everything down into its parts in a way, like and then it like loses meaning. So I don't know.
Yeah,
That's just
how much symbolism can you infuse in search for enchantment before you start to dismantle our understanding of reality?
I don't know. I bet Richard Rowland has an answer for that.
He probably does. He probably does.
Because if anybody, him and Matthew Peugeot, I get the sense that Matthew's kind of the real like symbolic genius. Like,
Not
uh,
all just the more eccentric. Like he
yeah,
embodies the the shamanic language better than. Or Jonathan's more of a translator. He's translating to the masses. I
mm-hmm.
don't think Matthew has any interest in translating to the masses. It's more whoever gets it, and if you don't, good luck out there.
Right. Yeah, Peugeot has like a mission.
Yeah, Peugeot's more Protestant.
Yeah, he is. That's the thing. That's what's happening with. That's what I see. Like you get into the conversations about belief and even like oh well now I'm gonna move on into this world, but it's like you're still taking your being and your like all of who you are into that space.
Yeah.
And
How long is the conference? How many days is the summit?
it's 3 days. It's just Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah, I'm really. If I was able to go, I'll be really excited to see Martin Shaw and have a chat, have a small chat with him. I was at the Chino conference last year and I did not say a word to Peugeot. Uh, I mustered up enough courage to shake John Wick's hand and tell him thank you. Oh my, he was so uncomfortable. Bless him. You can tell that he's he's very much would rather not have these many fans, but as
Mm.
that's the life he's created. So I was gracious. He was gracious enough to give me 5 seconds of thank you, but I did not. I could not go up to Peugeot.
I'm gonna go straight up to Peterson and say, "Why did you block me on Twitter?"
Well, actually, he blocked Emily as well, and he unblocked her. So he's
I
paying
need
attention.
I
Someone
need him.
is paying attention to this whole thing.
I need to make a video about it. Apparently, that's the key.
Yeah. What are you
Yeah,
looking forward to? I jumped on the stream late.
no, I mean, I haven't talked about it a whole lot. Neil was on here earlier and he asked me if I'd been around people that spoke in tongues or if I practiced that. So I went on this long tangent of my experience. I'm not charismatic, but my experience like with charismatic stuff.
Oh, if you could give me the TLDR,
What's
what's
what?
give me the summary of your thoughts on the speaking in tongues and charismatic and
All right, let me back up and say I'm excited to be around, like to be around people in a commonality. That's something that's like deep in me. It's been a long time, like from like used to being in ministry and experiencing that, and now it kind of is feeling like a little bit like that, and that feels like a healing to me. So, but I'm also like tampering that with an old part of me that wanted to like be overly ambitious about a situation, like whether it's networking or opportunity, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm like going on in my mind. But I just felt like it was important to be there. And
mm,
I didn't know Jordan Peterson was going to be there. I was like, maybe he was going to be in Little Rock a night that I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, like this week, like maybe tonight. He might be in Little Rock tonight. It's tonight or tomorrow. And I was like, but then, so I was about to buy a like expensive ticket to go see him, and then like the next day or two, Peugeot announced he was going to be at this conference, and I was like, okay, and it's going to be a more intimate space, anyways. Um, it's just important. It's important to have an embodied connection with all of this stuff that has happened in my life for 6 or 7 years.
yeah. I,
That I think that's more of it than anything.
that's how that's how Chino felt as well. It was
So,
the the instantiation of my online participation for like those 3 days. It was like, oh yeah, these are real people that I've been building relationships with over this however many years, and yeah, I'm excited for your reports back after, and I can compare notes with Grim Grizz.
that's gonna be wild. Yeah, I don't even know what he thinks of me. He called me glowy the other day, like us. He has this thing that I'm a secret agent, which is fun. He made
uh,
he made this comment about. I wish that on one of his videos, I wish that someone would have funded me with like all of Baxter's gear, like podcast startup gear. Like who's funding Baxter? So I don't.
yeah,
I
it's Grizz.
yeah. And then so that's exciting.
That's a great idea. If you want to get some get some cred with Grizz, help him steal the keck hat.
Yeah, I've thought about documenting him actually. Uh, he had talked about on a video yesterday, like, or it was today, I don't remember, about like if I had a like the Daily Wire crew to document him, and I was like, I could kind of do that.
Do it, do it, do it. Please do it.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll keep my eye open if I'll keep my camera with me, and if I see him like starting to like get frisky with Jordan Peterson, like go like talk to him, turn that camera on.
well, Grizz now has got a relationship with Peugeot somewhat. They spoke for like 2 seconds on stage uh, at Chino. So
Oh, okay.
he's, I think, I genuinely think Grim Grizz is going to meet Jordan Peterson, and I
Yeah.
need someone to document that.
Yeah, I'll be on. I feel like, yeah, there's not a lot of people going. So I feel like I have to kind of represent a little bit, you know.
Yeah,
And
I know Matt C is going as well.
who? Which one is he? Who's he?
He's mainly on Twitter and sometimes in chat, but he's a comic book writer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Is he working with like God Dog or anything like that?
he's got his own thing. Oh my gosh, what's his series? Let's give him a plug
For the four viewers out there.
for the folks for the folks online. Uh, wait, Kyrie, that's it. Of course, it's Kyrie. Kyrie.com.
Let's see. Let's see. Are you gonna help Graham steal the keke? Yeah, that'll
Are
give
you
me
going?
some
Are
cred.
you going with your wife, or is it just yourself?
It's just me, man. I'm flying down on Thursday. So yeah, I guess so. You asked me about the charismatic thing.
Hmm.
My experience with that is my dad was became pretty charismatic when I was pretty young, like 5, 6, and then we were when we moved to Arkansas from Nashville. He got on staff like part time at a church where he was. It was like a charismatic church, and there were like things speaking in tongues and services, and we went to like some worship night experience things where there was people falling out. Kind of the do you know who Benny Hinn is? You
Yeah.
ever like that was he was like a figure for that movement and stuff like that. So I experienced some of that when I was really young, and then we kind of moved out of that and became went on my mom's roots and became Baptist, and that was much more tame. And but the Baptist like kids all liked rock music, so I got into the rock music thing. But yeah, and I was just saying like I had some experiences when I was there as a young kid, probably like 8 or 9, closer to 10, where I was at like these one of these worship nights, and I felt like a real tangible, really present feeling, and I kind of responded to it. I went up front, and had somebody lay hands on me, and I laid down on the floor or something. But it was like I felt like a weight. But what's interesting is the thing that I could compare it most to is like when I've been depressed. Um, like when I lay down in a couch when I've been depressed, and I just feel like I'm sinking into the couch. Um, that's kind of probably what I would say that I felt like some like a heaviness, but I felt like the heaviness was like pulling me like to go respond to something, but it felt like my legs were heavy. But that was my experience. That was one of my experiences with that. And then I
That's,
would say like, yeah, go ahead.
no, I'll let you finish before I.
And then when I was in high school and I started getting to the rock and roll worship stuff, like some of those experiences were more like a transcendent like just like a soaring, feeling chill bumps from awesome rock music and like worship, like singing and being like unified with like 2,000 kids at some camp or conference. Like that felt like that was a very spiritual experience. But I wouldn't like pin that on like charismatic.
Oh, hello. Am I still here?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I grew up. Would you call it charismatic? It's very interesting because I was born in Nigeria. You don't know anything about me, so I'll give you a little bit of my my stories. I was born and raised in Nigeria. I'm pretty sure I was born in a church, an actual church building, because my grandfather, my mom's father, he had a church and a thing that I think I was born in there. But my parents, I don't think were ever together. So, and then my dad moved to the UK. Well, when I was 5, he dropped me off at my sister's, and I grew up. They raised me for the next 7, 8 years. But on summer holidays, I would go spend that with my mom. in a different state in Nigeria. So, but in all of those different places, church was a thing. Church was important, and it was always, if not charismatic, Pentecostal. Don't quite know the distinction, but I think Pentecostal was definitely an accurate framing for it. It's everyone speaks in tongues, everyone fruit of gift of the spirits. My auntie was a prophet. I don't know the right words, but she uh, said, "Thus says the Lord," and then she'll give the word and all of those. So it's the Christianity in Africa runs on Pentecostalism. That's the fuel that keeps it going. It's not theological. Let's break down the way the Bible shows the Trinity and all of this. And it's not. It's no. We see the Spirit is moving, and yeah, it's yeah, which also lends itself towards prosperity gospel. The Bereans type can easily prop up in that environment as well. So my experience of Pentecostalism is it's it's Christianity. Like it was all the Christianity that I knew. There was the Roman Catholics, but I, they were barely Christian in my book, and even the Anglicans were suspects. Uh, Pentecostal churches were the Christian churches.
Hmm. Do you think any of that's changing? Are you muted? Did I mute you?
No, I muted myself. I
Okay.
said changing in Nigeria or changing in general in Christendom.
I guess more from Nigeria or that area.
No, changing. No, it's if it's changing into anything, it's changing into being more secular, not changing from Pentecostal Christianity to a different Christianity.
I wonder if it'll follow the path though of like becoming more secular, actually becoming more intellectual, and then like discovering more of the theological, and then that kind of goes back into maybe the spiritual.
It's yeah, it's something I've been giving a lot of thought to. The shape of Christianity in I was going to say Africa, but Nigeria more specifically. Now I've not been there since I've not lived there since 2007. So
Hmm.
I'm speaking from like a very removed place, which has its advantages as well. But to your point, I don't think it's going to follow the exact path of get more secular, get more um, propositions, and then crash. It's the world is shrunk so much with this what we're doing right now that
Mm-hmm.
things don't go the way they used to. What the 80s happens, the 80s in America happens in like the 2000s in a different country. No, they're all happening right now live because every kid is got a phone. It's not yeah, they can see what we can see, and things are moving and changing faster. So I don't, for that reason alone, I don't think it's just going to follow the same pattern that the West followed.
That makes sense.
Another
Hmm.
thing is that you can't the secular box is not big enough to contain all the spirits in Africa. Like spirituality,
Oh.
spirituality is very much still alive. There is no even as secular as you can get. Everyone sees the madman walking down the road naked and like, oh yeah, that man's possessed by something. It's
Hmm.
and like there are still babalawos, meaning juju priests. There are people that are going to pre. That all of these are still there. And yeah, I don't see that. For those reasons, I don't see secularity being able to stifle out the enchantment the way it did in the West.
Hmm. So it's almost like we're gonna meet them there.
Yeah, it's more likely that the the receding of modernity will bring everyone back into a space where a professor from Canada is talking about speaking to spirits.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And it's all and it's interesting. I was thinking about making a video about this. so a very very prominent worship leader girl. She's a songwriter named Brooke Fraser, and she she just
I had a
is.
crush on her
She's beautiful, man.
before she became Brooke Ligertwood when she was
Yeah,
still.
legit. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, uh, I think she's a pretty legitimate person from just like my wife and I have followed her for a very long time. Like we've been in that stream and that movement since basically that was all starting. We were doing all that stuff in oh 07, oh 06. Like we were doing all that stuff. So, but released, she just wrote a song and she used the King James to do chant song that sounds like historical high church worship. And she had it produced, and um and to me that just kind of, it's like all these things are like signals. Like you put them together, and I know you can read into a lot of stuff, but it's like things are like, who knows what church fathers she's been listening to, and all like, you, like all this stuff is converging
So
because of like what.
this is what I wanted to get talk to you about when I said we should have a one-on-one conversation. It's this because you've
Well,
been
tell me.
plugged into the evangelical culture,
Mm-hmm.
and I to Azimio, can I? Is there a feedback? Is that my side? Is there an echo on your side, or is there just on my side?
I don't
Hello.
have an echo.
Okay. All right. I think I muted it. Yeah. So little bit more about myself, so you can know where I'm coming from. My Christian faith is I've been saved like I don't know, 3, 4 times, definitely 3 times, where I can say I can't say yeah. I there were 3 times where if you'd asked me 5 minutes after saying the prayer, I'd be like, this is the one. I'm definitely saved now. This is going to be the real save. The first was as a 7 or 8 year old in Nigeria when Reverend Ryan Bunker, this German um, evangelist that he traveled throughout Africa in the 90s and 2000s, and I attended one of his revivals at a massive field, a football field. I had an amazing experience that got me into that, plus my uncle and auntie's religious like tyranny. There was no option. You go to church 3 or 4 times a week. You go to all of the services. You stay after church to put the chairs away because it's important. All of those things was drilled into me, of course. But after that experience, I really got into the Bible. I loved the Bible. That was my jam. All those crazy stories just did it for me. So that's one. The second time was in secondary school. So after moving to the UK, there was like a revival broke out in my school, triggered by everyone being aware, coming across a YouTube video that talks about how music influences people, and we're like, shit, we are all so fucked. Let's
Mm.
we need something bigger than us because there's clearly evil spirits in the music industry. All the Illuminati, all of the things that can those YouTube videos will tell you back in the day. Machiavelli spelt "I am alive." Early YouTube rabbit holes that we went onto somehow spun us back into it. Like friends of mine taking faith seriously. Now, I was one of the ones that was already known to be, like I said, I've read the Bible twice as a kid, like front to back, understood very little of it, but just loved reading it. So I was known to be the biblically knowledgeable one. I ran a fellowship after school in like secondary school and from that fellowship, two of the guys became pastors. The
Mm.
rest that gave up, like fell off after like 3 months or so. Anyway, but that was the second time being uh, taking my faith seriously, and that's when I got plugged into the evangelical world, the world of the Song, the Brooke Phrases, the online, the Francis Chang's, the he's the guy that yeah, Andrew Cole, all of, or just you, whatever the internet had to offer regarding Christianity, I was taking, and a lot of it was just mainstream evangelical movement. So that's how I'm plugged into it, very from the far, but looking as a young Christian in the UK, where there is very little Christian culture, quote unquote. Um, I looked overseas and got my Christian culture from there. And quite
Yeah.
frankly, most UK churches get their UK or their Christian culture from America. But you were
And
there underground. That's why I wanted to talk to you.
yeah, I was. I was not very successful, but I traveled and did like worship music for camps and conferencing. Like I did that part time, like probably 12 to 16 weeks out of the year or weekends or whatever. And then and so I was totally tapped in to that world. And then I did a little bit of youth ministry in that, uh, taught David Platt's Radical, you know. But even so, some things happened though.
What
Like I
was
hear
the
Luke.
sorry, before you get into what was the
Go.
energy like being part of that? Was it did you guys feel like something like was it like a very missional, I'd imagine? Like we're all doing this for or was it more creative, just letting
I felt like I was on a mission to save the world in a way. Not like I felt like I was a part of a mission that was like changing the world or something. Um, but that was very much mixed with like ambition too, and that was always the rub in that whole world because so much of it's built on celebrity. I experienced it like enough, um, but like rock Christian rock worship, rock and roll worship was. I mean, it happened in the UK. Like Delirious and Matt Redman were over there doing stuff. You've probably heard of those guys, but it's like I was kind of a part of bringing it to like the South in a probably in a I probably played a role in introducing Hillsong to like Arkansas, Tennessee,
really
Mississippi, Alabama, like um, because that's where I traveled and that's where I did a lot of the camps and I would see like 8,000 kids a summer float through a camp and I'm playing like 90% Hillsong and they would be like, who are these people? So I definitely like played a role in a certain way. Uh, it, but that was like 2007, 2008, 2009, and because like you heard me talking on one, you commented one time like about From the Inside Out, like that song came out in 2006. So
wow.
like I was only 3 years, like I was playing that at camp in 2008, and back then before Spotify and everything, that was like still like a quick turnaround. Like people weren't caught up to that kind of stuff where I was from. So that was my experience with that, and to be honest with you, I feel like then the liturgy stuff started to come into evangelicalism in the early tens, like 10, 11. People were writing about it. Well, they were writing about it before, but it was getting into like the Baptist world in a like the Calvinist Baptist in 2010, and then I went to a conference called Doxology and Theology in 2012, and Charlie Hall, who was a worship leader for Passion in the early mid 2000s, he was attending that conference, even though he had a bigger platform than everybody was there. And I had actually done a concert with him, like in 2008. Um, but the thing that what I'm trying to tie to your question specifically is that this symbolic world feels to me exactly like that felt in 2012.
The Theology and Doxology conference.
Yeah, because now like most they were introducing like the idea of liturgy and even story. Like this guy named Mike Cosper, who's now the editor for Christianity Today. He um, he was also the guy that produced the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, which is a very popular podcast. I actually he was speaking at that conference, even though he was a worship leader. He was speaking about story, um, and he actually goes through he was going through the Genesis story at that conference in 2012, and he then wrote a book called Rhythms of Grace, which is about bringing liturgy into it was like bringing liturgy into evangelical churches, and and I did some consult work with him. Like I had him do consult work for me, like as a worship leader, and so he was kind of like a thinking about these things, and now like I just map that on to everybody that's
Now that we've gotten rid of Christian, let's talk about what's really important. Why you should like and subscribe to the Navigating Pattern YouTube channel. And they've also got a Patreon. Wait, is Christian coming back? This is no longer funny. Welcome back.
Dude, sorry. You hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound good.
So what I guess what I'm trying to say is this feels like that to me. Like me going to the doxology and theology conference is like 500 people. This thing's like 500 people, and it's like the result. It's a little different, but it kind of still feels like that to me.
What came out of the doxology and theology conference?
Well, what I was about to say is I feel like the Lances and the Lukes that are just it's not like they didn't need an in between gap with liturgy. They just like went, and there's a lot of that. In the South, it's not going to be like that because Baptist culture is so pervasive, and I kind of feel like I'm in a place in my community where I'm continuing to like bring the sacred into evangelical spaces um, in our community.
I take offense to that sentence, and I know you didn't mean it in the way that I took it,
That's
but
okay.
bringing of the sacred into evangelical spaces is probably the reason why I'm probably going to stay even Protestant, because I feel this snobbery with the high churches. That's like, oh, this is the sacred, and you guys, you've got your guitars and your smoking. Yes, yes, we do, and the spirit is still there, sacred.
Let Okay. Let me. I'll break it down a little bit because
Yeah.
I think that we're in the same place actually. Um, I I think that my the way I see it is that the rock music created like when rock music is actually done very well, it creates transcendence, like a transcendent experience. Um, and you can have moments where it's sacred, but I don't think that the culture has a value for. I think it has more of a value for a transcendent experience than maybe something I would consider to be sacred.
Break down the difference between transcendent and sacred for me.
Like like you can go and have a transcendent experience with U2 or Taylor Swift and just the unification of that. But I don't think I would describe those situations or even like in a big Hillsong concert as like sacred in the sense because you could say rock music is sacred and that they are worshiping Christ. Um, but nothing really like if somebody broke a guitar or a cymbal, like no one's gonna think that was that big a deal. Or a mic quit working. But say you had a like the host in a high church, like if you believe the presence was real and it fell, or you're not taking care because you believe it's actually sacred.
So sacred is transcendence plus reverence.
maybe. I don't have it all worked out, but
I
I
see.
wouldn't say there's not reverent moments in contemporary worship either.
Yeah,
That's
I do see what you're pointing or what you're gesturing at.
so. I'll
Go on.
give you an example. This past Sunday at church, my church is like it was like 30 people in a basement. What we're doing right now, and every Sunday I've been bringing in this little Celtic cross and a candle, and we set it down in the middle. And like we're not like front and center. Like me and my wife are like on the side, and then like somebody's like reading some liturgy over here. But I'm playing like I played Desert Song last week. We played Oceans this week. We we played Oceans this week because a 60-year-old requested it. So so like
Sorry, just really quickly. I don't know. You said it. Either McMo or Neil. One of them said to all the Orthodox and Catholics, "You might not like it, but your kids and grandkids will be listening to Oceans on repeat because it's just that good."
so like me and my wife were playing Oceans when it came out like a decade ago. It came out in 2013. So like you know that's not it's but for this lady who's been through a lot of pain, it's a small community. I know what her pain has come from. And she texted my wife this week and said, "Could you and Christian play Oceans at church?" And again, this is with like, we do 3 songs and then it's like a lot of read and response. There's a lot of like, I played As the Deer. I played As the Deer. I played, this other guy played this gospel song by a guy named Robbie Say. But like last week, like I always want to have a song that's got the gospel, and then I always have a praise song, and then like a response to like confession. And so that's it. But I play guitar. I don't play hymns or organ, but I like the interactive nature of liturgy that isn't just about me and a microphone.
Mm.
That's actually very, very important. This was actually the first Sunday I did. I had this young guy come in. It was at his house. I actually had this young guy come in, and he sang a song, and my wife sang the other 2 songs. I had other people doing the liturgy, and I just played guitar. And I don't know if I've ever done that. Of course, this is also me with having a 7-year gap where I didn't do anything. So that's part of that as well. Um, but yeah, like I'm trying to say is like I haven't. That's who I am. But
So
I have values. I have some pretty high values for things that I feel like are anemic within big box evangelicalism.
and one of those is, I think you're right to point out the fact that in the evangelical worship scene, it's the worship leaders got a lot of power with that microphone.
And so do the preachers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that celebrity culture is sort of a feature, not a bug.
Yes. And now I'll temper that with people can critique modern worship all they want. There is real serious fucking talent in that world.
Joel Houston is top 5 songwriters that's ever lived in my books. I'm not arguing with anyone. It's top
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, I agree. He changed my life as an artist. So like
Yeah,
so so there's like and then when I listen to some like young people that are like, this, like in that video, I don't know if you watched the video I made about like Hillsong being closer to orthodoxy than like your average praise team at
I
your
think
church.
yeah, I might have watched that, which might be more of the more reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this stuff.
Yeah, and so like that's when you have like professional and even like the Orthodox picture I use is like it was like a special service with like a high level person, and there was like the incense was there. There's all these primary colors, and there's and here's the other thing I thought about after was like the official uh, wardrobe um, for the leaders of the church. that was so ornate and set them apart from everybody, all I could think about was like how the people in the band are also set apart from everybody else, and you can just tell because they are like holding that place of other, like whether it's the hair. I mean, I did this. I had like a V-neck that went down to here, and I was like, I was at a church camp and I got evaluated by a staff person because of how deep my V was back in 2011, and so like,
Oh yeah, I could definitely see young Christian in that.
dude, I'll probably like post up some stuff in the future about like that part of my life, but like, but so but there was no question who was in the band at this camp, and there was no question who's like the head leaders of worship in an Orthodox setting, and I just was like, that's so much more close to each other than your average bread and butter Sunday morning worship team. Is something completely else than both of those things.
Symbolism happens. Those patterns are inevitable.
Yeah, and that was the thing, and I feel like in some ways I've referenced that snake that eats its tail. Like that feels like that's what I feel like's happening right now. Is like orthodoxy is coming around, like or high church Latin mass or whatever is coming around to the to that, and it's actually meeting the people that have the values, the aesthetic values, or the intellectual values, or the or whatever that this the mushy middle. There's like a mushy middle in between all of it, you know. And I don't know. That's some of my thoughts on it.
No, I think your intuitions are probably right. There is a, I mean, there's definitely something changing because we all feel that change. It could be the receding of modernity, the I don't know, the birth of wokeism. There's just people have got different ways of talking about this change. Uh, Pisces, moving from Pisces to Aquarius, I've heard that as well. So everyone's pointing to something, and on every level, like all little corners. I think Chad made a video about asking the echoes back. Oh, the sound of my own voice is so annoying. Let me do this. Yeah, Chad made a video once about asking, are there other little corners? And as someone that spent most of my adulting life on YouTube, yes, there were loads of little corners, and in almost all of them, there's a conversation being had about what's going on, and I find that interesting. So
What's some examples? Can you give me a little example?
sports, the way so I'm a this is painful because my team just lost the cup final on Sunday. So yeah, but I'm a Chelsea fan.
Hmm.
I I was born, like I said, and I grew up in Nigeria. Chelsea's a team in West London, and when I the reason I'm a Chelsea fan is because a Nigerian player played for Chelsea, and also uh the best Nigerian player when I was growing up was Kanu. He played for Arsenal. My dad's an Arsenal fan. My cousin's a Chelsea fan. My dad was in the UK. I spent more time with my cousin in Nigeria, so I became a Chelsea fan than an Arsenal fan, because that's who I influenced me. And he was left-footed. I'm left-footed. Just a whole bunch of reasons went into why I chose the team that I chose. But the important thing is the connection between West London and where I was in Ibadan in West Africa, Nigeria, was a person, this player who is Nigerian that got signed by Chelsea. Okay, so that's an easily explainable thing. Nowadays, that doesn't need to be the case because the because of the internet, quite frankly, because the sport is just every sport has just grown so much that there are now fans from all over the world. Now, when I first came to the UK, it was very clear like these sports like football means more than anything.
Hmm.
On a Saturday, everything stops. You support your team. You you're happy when they win. You're sad when they lose. But you go back home and you listen to The pundits on the TV tell you about what went wrong. You shout at the TV. You go to the pub with your friends. You discuss it. Then came football fan channels on YouTube, which was a place where real fans can go and just vent about whatever is going on. Uh, that actually brought more fans to the game, to the sport. People started supporting teams not based on the player that plays on the team, but based on personalities on the internet that talk about their favorite teams. So I've seen this community build up, the online football fan community build up to the point now where the Sky Sport, which is like the ESPN of the UK, is now hiring those people to be on their shows because TV is dying and internet is winning. And what that's done now is that the fan base discourse is now global. So you'll have people in South Korea giving their opinion about what's happening in Liverpool, and the people in Liverpool are the one that actually going to the games, paying them to go
Yeah.
to the games, are getting pissed off because the people that are so far disconnected from it have very strong, loud opinions about what's happening, even though they're not there. So you see this conflict about, okay, what does it mean to be a football fan happening in the football fan space? Do you have to go to every game? Can you be a fan from wherever country and never be to a game? So I've seen that conversation happening about how do you participate as part of this community? That's an example of the ways in which every little corner is having conversations about what's going on.
And so this one you're saying is specific to faith or religion to a degree where, and what does it mean, like, I guess that to map that onto, like, well, what does it mean to have like conversations where maybe the foundation is God, like, and that's it, like, and so what does that mean, what is happening here, like, okay, well, it's not church, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, partly. Okay, to map on the football thing. Excuse me, so it's a little bit clearer. Oh, Max is gonna die. Let me grab my charger. Give me a
All
second.
right, if you're joining us. I've been trying to get a conversation with Teo for like a month, and he lives in the UK, and so I'm just like going with it. I may chop this up and just like release it as a podcast in, next week or something. But anyway, still muted.
I'm now unmuted. Okay, good. So to map on the football thing, there's in 2020 or 2019, one of those years, was this proposal for what's called the Super League. I have to explain this to Americans. So football is Europe's biggest sport, and the biggest competition in Europe is the Champions League. The
Yeah,
Champions League,
I get a little bit. I understand a little bit about it. But go ahead.
yeah, but for the audience, they most probably wouldn't.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, the Champions League is or five or any teams from Europe can enter the Champions League, but the strongest teams are the teams from England, Spain, France, Italy, and Germany. So those five countries send four of their best local teams into the competition to try to win it. And but that's the biggest league that's the biggest competition in football. In club football, the World Cup is a different thing. Those are all countries. But in club football, it's Champions League. The Champions League also allows there are always smaller teams that find the teams from Israel, teams from Turkey that find their way into it somehow. And that's they never win it, but they're there. Now, the proposal of Super League was to exclude any small team, to allow just the biggest teams from England, Spain, Italy to make a new competition that's called a Super League. That basically is NBA style, where they'll play just too many games, but it'll be the best teams and they thought this was going to be, the people that proposed this thought this was going to be a home run. The teams had already agreed to it before it was announced. So 20 teams from across 5 countries in Europe, 20 of the biggest clubs in Europe signed on to start this new league. 20 years before, before this, the Premier League was born pretty much out of a similar thing, where they decided to change the format of competition in England only this time, and basically the rich teams got richer, the poor teams got screwed, and they tried to run this again, but this time over Europe, and the fans revolted in a major, major, major way. I think it was announced on Thursday. Before Monday, all the teams had like dropped out of it because of just the
the backlash.
backlash was immense, and like fans took to the street. Fans of clubs that hated each other united to just say "fuck the Super League."
Hmm.
Even international fans were like, "No, no, no, we don't want this." And they were like the people that organized it. Like one of them was the head of UEFA, so they were shocked. They were thrown for a loop. That would not have happened 20 years ago. It didn't,
Because
because
of social media. Yeah.
of the voice of the fans, and the the unity that came around from like all of the football world on social media and in person, where even there was a division between online fans and offline fans. Everyone came together saying, "No, we you're gonna fuck up competition for all of us." That would not have happened. It didn't happen when they did the Premier League propositions. So that's a change in how small the world has gotten, and now connections are being made across the globe, and people are uniting over football in this case. Now, transfer that to the little corner, similar thing, but now we're talking on a deeper level, faith
Hmm.
and worldviews,
Hmm.
and what do you make of reality?
Hmm. Yeah. The thing that the last part brought to my mind when you talked about unity was like those Hillsong, those unifying experiences, and then also, so there's that, but then there's the unity of like, oh, the Universal Catholic Church, like capital C Catholic, we're all doing liturgy at the same time. Or in evangelicalism, it was like more like trend based and fad based. We're all like tracking along with the song, the author, the preacher. Do you know what I'm like? We're trying to find unifying principles to like to hold us together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's getting hard. Like it's getting harder. At the same time that there's the search for it. It's getting a lot harder to find things to unify because the options are so much more available. Um, and I think the modern worship scene is struggling, or all the music industry
All
is.
the music I was gonna say.
But like specifically with like what Chris Tomlin was doing in 2005 was like it was like 90% of certain like Southern Baptist churches were singing a Chris Tomlin song every Sunday for like 10 years. And that was because that was when there were still these like avenues of like where you could funnel, whether it's the radio stations, and there was only you had to buy CDs, and there was like all this. But now everyone's competing for attention because the barrier to entry for all of that, people make killer records in their basement. And let me grab the charger.
Go for it. Whilst you're doing that, let me just respond to PK, who's making good points in the comments. But once Sky Sports starts dipping into the original internet community for content, what happens? Great question. In other words, does there exist a danger when money contracts are placed on the table under football TLC, as we use this in the example? What happens when a little corner gets big? These are all good questions. And I think you already know the answer to them by the way you phrase those questions. Uh, Usually not good things. Usually you lose the magic.
Well, that's the thing with even with Peugeot moving into like a market, like I mean Peterson or Peugeot moving into like the market of things, you know, and even for Vacay Foundation, all that stuff. Like that's and even it goes down as small as to Paul's subscriber base. Like it's all the same thing. Um, and that's I mean I don't know. I mean I think the thing is maybe you try what can happen. This is what I'm kind of interested in. Is like, can you keep pressing down? Can like so you know I have 120 subs. Like say in a year I have 1,000 subs or whatever, or 2 years or five, whatever it is. I'm not. I'm just. Can I keep pressing down instead of just trying to press up? I think that's always the question, and for as longer than you think you can.
Are you? I think I was talking to who was I talking to? Andre earlier, and I said I think might be the most used phrase in all of this conversation, and I just heard myself say it about 10 times, and it's bugging me. Nevertheless, I think that that's what PVK is doing. I
Yeah.
think PVK has found a way to both be a knight, but also be a nuke in his own kingdom. Meaning, are you familiar with the Knight and Nukes essay about how YouTube viewership works? So the channel. So for this channel, you would be the king or the knight, and then the viewers, the people in the chats, would be like the pawns or the nukes. And the nukes elect the knight, but they can also dethrone the knight, and so the audience capture thing can work for you and it can work against you as a YouTube channel. And I think what PVK's done is found a way to be both a channel leader and a channel member of his own channel, uh, by encouraging a giving voice to people that disagree with him. And that is such an important thing. People like Jacob, the Marks, that's right, give it a thumbs up. The Marks, whoever disagrees with them is just like, okay, I see your point. That's not what I'm doing, but and he just does that. And uh raising the values of Randall's conversation. Now, those probably still get the least views on his channel. No, that'll probably be the rough draft for Sunday, and then the randos. Uh, but he's always bigging up the randos, bigging up the his audience and their stories, and encouraging his audiences to form communities under him,
Yeah, and I
not
think
them.
and it is an example thing because I mean I don't I mean I'll speak to this because I've done this for 2 months or so, like, and it's been an emotional roller coaster, um, and because there's like this like I didn't know what I was doing, and then there was this huge dopamine hit, and then you're like, oh shit, like, oh, I could do something, I could be something, and then it's like, uh, but I'm trying to stay authentic to this what I came in with, and then um, you know, Paul's tagged me in a video. I did this thing. It's like, oh shit, you know, big dopamine hit, and I'm like, and then I get on a stream with a bunch of people, and it's like the stream and the conversations like help stabilize because it like it pairs down the ego and the dopamine, and then you have to be patient and like and then you may not have like a good produced like situation or something, you know, it's like um
Mhm.
and then you like go back, okay, maybe I have a creative thought and I'm gonna like put this together, and then somebody like spits it out, and then like fucking Jordan Hall comments on your video. You're like, oh, hey dude, I wasn't like God's honest truth, like it's like I that hit me from left field so hard that I was like, that's also when I sensed the power too. It's
Mm.
like because everybody's fucking ego is like is churning, you know, like even his, and it's like, oh. And then I'm blocked by Jordan Peterson, so I don't even know if that's because my Twitter channel was basically filled up with like porn bots for a little bit. I had to like figure that out, you know, or like, or because I said something about like I was tagging him in videos. I have no idea, but like, um,
When was that? When did that happen? You being blocked? Was that recent?
yeah, probably 2 weeks, and so I was like, everybody's everybody's playing like, and I don't even know. Then Paul tags me in a video, and it's behind his paywall. He did it twice, and I was like, damn it. I withheld the first one, and then I was like, "You've got my $6.99 or whatever." Like, I didn't like. Is he playing that game, or is it just like? And
The
I don't
long
care.
rift. PBK, if you're watching, that's how you get more members. Keep tagging people in videos.
Yeah, that can't withstand the narcissism, and I was just like, I commented on it. I was like, "Wow, you're," and it was funny because he tagged me doing my very first podcast, and the title of his video was "Podcast Long Form Podcasts Are Dying."
And this is who killed him. We found who's responsible.
Yeah.
Roman Christian started yours truly. The numbers are going down for everyone.
So it's that question. Who said it? What happens whenever something gets big? It's already big. I mean, Jordan Peterson's the cornerstone. You know, and he's
Easy.
yes. How go back? Tell me. Talk to me
Easy.
of the whole thing. What would you say as far
It,
as like?
it, it might be one of the sources of the stream. Probably the biggest source of the stream. But as far as a cornerstone,
Okay, I see what you're saying. Like,
I don't think.
well, PVK wouldn't be PVK without doing 4 years of Jordan Peterson
Yeah,
uh, interpretation films. That's what I like.
yeah. But
So,
but what I mean is that his bigness is detaching her from the corner that
100%.
we
But
don't. We're not operating at that.
but
So
what I mean by that is he's the question of what happens when TLC gets big. Well, I mean that's what happens. I mean,
yeah, I see what
yeah,
you're saying.
and you know, but I mean I've been profoundly impacted in my embodied, pardon me, psyche on how challenged I've been to push back against only for clicks or only for subs. Like it's been a roller coaster, but it's like there are things within this space that have made me push back. There are other parts. There's parts of my personal life, but there's also parts of the experience that I've been experiencing that have made me push back. And
Bro, I've not even started a channel and I'm already going through what you're describing. So
yeah, and I've got it. I'll give you an example. So Luke Thompson put out like what are they called on the community tab whenever people make posts? Well, he put out a post on YouTube. Who's
right.
the coolest person in the TLC? And then like, you know, people were saying different people. And then like this was like I'd made like I'd been doing this like 3 or 4 weeks, and President Foxman puts, I don't know, Christian Baxter seems pretty cool. And I was like, what?
I love that kid.
Yeah,
No.
and so I went on when I finally got invited. Well, I mean, I guess it was the Discord was always there for Broken Clock Tower, but I didn't know. I was pretty ignorant to all that stuff. And I got on there, and he was like on there. It made me like, well, this kid had some connection with me. Not like, oh, he thinks I'm cool. Like, all that means to me is like I connected to him in some way. So I'm
Yeah.
curious about that. So I'm gonna have a conversation with, you know. So I reached out to him, and then we had a phone call, and then we were talking about some of this stuff, and then he actually talked about it in a video yesterday night about what I was talking about on my experience of connecting with Jordan Hall, about that whole wave of emotion and stuff. And so there, yeah, it's like, but that was able to come out in a stream more easily than if I tried to sit down and make a video about it. It made more sense to have it in conversation in a place than to be like, let me tell you, YouTube, about my experience with, you know, like,
Yeah.
and so I don't know, man. I think, I don't, yeah, that's part of that.
I think that's why Neil's got one of the best strategies for how to engage with this.
With trying to
with
like,
this.
to make his own small hierarchy that blinds.
Yeah. It's to be intentional with the people you're seeking out to make to build a relationship with.
Yeah. I that was that's the other thing, like trying to respond to something like in the conversations that I've had, minus the Jordan Hall one, but like with Pete from Strange Theology and Kale, and then like we've tried to connect for a while,
Yeah.
and then even President Foxman, and then I had one with Justin Wells this weekend, and because I just was like, oh, I see something here. There's something here that I want to reach out to, and it's not like based on clout. It's like based on something that I'm resonating with that I can't even put into words, really. And it's made sense so far. So I don't know, man. I was honestly curious too. Is like, you know, you bring the you help the melanin count in the corner.
I help her, I carry it.
A lot of people think I'm Hispanic.
Nowadays, you should accept that. You should take that. It's not great for your kind at the moment, and a bit of melanin will help.
Yeah, dude. No, my dad was born in South Korea. He's half Korean.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. We're taking up the DEI, but the TLC.
Because it's very German.
Oh.
Very, very European Orthodox, and there's a lot of European. I guess you're kind of European.
I mean, I guess I'm not. My dad was born in London, so he's English, which makes me English, even though I was born in Nigeria.
Do you have dual citizenship?
I do.
That's cool.
I do. What was I gonna say? Yeah, Chino was fun for that as well. It was me, Kojo, and Blad. Well, like the three black guys at Chino. And then we somehow found each other and still went out. It's crazy.
What we got? JPB is polarizing at this point. Once you sign with Daily Wire, it doesn't go unnoticed if you refuse offers like in order to preserve or perceived authenticity.
Do you refuse offers like that in order to preserve or perceived authenticity, or do you say yes to it in order to reach the massive numbers it now does?
I mean, I think it's complicated because people people are still, I mean, you can be captured by something, but you're also still carrying the part of you that whatever mission he has been on is still ticking around in there. And if he believes that that's a way that he can get his maps of meaning out there, I think that's part of it. But I also think obviously money plays a huge role. That's always a reality. And I think part of it too was part of it's for his own protection. Um, he lost his career. You know, he's about to be completely disbarred or whatever by the Psychologist Association in Canada, and he's a capitalist. I mean, he's not shy about that. He's had other business ventures apart from just his own brand. So I think all of it's at play, and I mean he's showing up at this little. I doubt I doubt that he's taking a ticket cut at Symbolic World. You know,
Or if it does, he's got a friends and family discount with Peugeot.
yeah, and so I think that's him trying to probably, if anything, makes sense for him to like descend from the mountain. That's part of it, but um, yeah, I think that stuff's complicated. I don't like the sellout trope. Like, I never have liked it because I think that there was a part of me that if I ever had a large level of success, that I was like, or even when I did have small successes or something like, and that the desire to do well is not, it's not evil, you know, to maybe take care or something, build
Let's
something.
stay let's stay up for a bit on this sellout point because I think it's a
Yeah.
good.
So
I
that was
was
one.
going
Go
to
ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to if and when I do start my channel, one of the first thing I'll tell people is I promise you I am going to sell out when the time comes. Do not do not treat me as you're in the independent era. No, 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 because for now who you sell out to, I think the signing with CAA and Daily Wire, it's important. You signal back who you associate yourself with. The not 100% you align with them, but there's enough alignment that you're comfortable with them being the institution which serves as protection for your project. And I think it's for that reason. It's you do need protection if you're going to if you believe in what you're doing and you do want to what you're doing to reach people like a bigger mass than the small number that your number allows, where you want your message to spread across to more people than you will ever meet personally. There is an aspect of quote unquote selling out that needs to happen. Now you can sell out without selling your soul. That's the distinction that I make. There's a line that if you cross it, the selling out people have got a point. But I think for the most part, we, myself included, I mean, my favorite artist once they go mainstream start becoming my favorite artist. It's just I let things go and they get to a certain level. So I understand that impulse of not your it's too big, you sell it. It's no longer the small precious thing. But I do think the trope of oh no, he's just sold out is lazy.
And no offense, but so I think like, or maybe do offense, but the thing I would add to that is that um, the, some people need to see a person put out a polished project before they'll even look at it. So like the better graphics, the better video, the better production, the take my 8-week course that's put out by Daily Wire with a nice glossy, you know, we would Christian publishing house like that. There's the mushy middle. That's all that they won't go watch 200 hours of Jordan's rants in a classroom pacing across Toronto University talking about Pinocchio. Like they're like, what is this? And so, um, and do I believe he has something to offer? I sure as hell do. So like that's how I that's how I see some of that, because there's that's why it's the masses, and people that tend to like look to the future. And I had this in my conversation with Jordan, like people that grew up watching sci-fi or something, like you're gonna like always be looking. You can kind of see something coming up because the people that were imagining the future were imagining part of what was really going to happen. Like, and so you like you can see that future in Jordan Peterson 5 to 7 years ago, and it maybe was helping you because you were disenchanted with everything going on around you. But that disenchantment's not going to hit until inflation's 20% for some people, like, so then they're going to be like in a crisis, and maybe him or Paul Vanderklay at this point is going to help them, but he's downstream from Peterson, and so much of what Peterson done, if you get Paul Vanderklay, you're going to get 25% of Peterson, so like I think it's complicated, and it's uh, but people do sell out for money completely. I mean, that happens too. So
That's the thing. If you're selling now for money, that's when you're selling your soul.
mhm.
I completely agree with that. And even taken away from Peterson specifically, I think there's a I lost it.
Well, you watch. I think you can just see like Peugeot starting a publishing house, as he should actually. I mean, that's the thing. Like, oh, but is he selling out to make money? Well, he's gonna make money, but
Hopefully, it makes
that's the reward for his diligence. And what's Peterson's doing when he's 60? God, I mean, he put in the fucking time. He did. And
Mhm.
Jordan, and so like, and so did Peugeot and his brother. Like they put in the time, and then we think that stuff just happens, and then like, oh, they get greedy, and then there's like, that's not really how that works. And then the other like Vervaeke, it's the same thing. Starting his foundation, it's the same thing. And even Paul's at this point is probably pushing 7 years of Peterson reporting. And and when I say Peterson reporting, I mean everything he's doing now. But like that that rhythm and that habit was built on Peterson reporting for the most part. And so now he's I mean, maybe expert like 5 7 years, but that's also built on top of his pastoral work of taking cultural information, compressing that down, putting that out into text. Like he's been doing that for 35 years. So like, so that Paul gets 30,000 subs, and he gets a subscriber base that's going to help pad his retirement or something, and offer him opportunities into retirement. Like that's not selling out, but those are like hierarchical scales of growth, you know. And
I think the speed of growth is also one of the reasons why people make the selling out accusation. And PVK is very intentional with this small growth thing.
yeah,
I mean, for years, he had a Patreon that no one really knew about, that he doesn't speak of. But the people that gave, he encouraged them to give to his church more than to give to him personally. So he's very intentionally monitoring the growth of his internet fame status, and I think we would all be wise
yeah,
to do as PVK does in that regards.
yes. And it's a paradigm shift. And I mean, the Jordan Peterson thing, like he would, it's hard to know like how much of that was in his control and how much of it wasn't. Because I mean, he was doing YouTube and he was doing TV appearances before all that stuff happened. But um, I mean,
I
I don't know if
think
he's the one that posted that trans activist like protest. I don't know if he's the one that posted that video or not about him, or if that's somebody else posted it about him.
I'm not sure. I could probably imagine it would be the trans students trying to show up
Yeah,
how much of a thing it is that would have posted it, and then the internet does what the internet does. But I think I'm not the biggest Peterson. Um, I've not done like a big deep dive into. I never watched the biblical series. I saw his JRE appearances and thought, wow, this guy's bringing science and faith together. But I've not done a deep dive to it. A lot of
yeah,
people have. But even I can sort of tell there is a clear um, savior complex that comes with that he shows, meaning he's trying to save the world.
yeah.
He,
He's
he,
he's a
he,
king.
he-
He's a king archetype.
yes, and so I think that's not a good or a bad thing. That's just a thing.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of that in me as well, which is probably why I probably see some of that in him. Probably a lot of projection in what I'm saying about him. But I do think that's a part of it, and that impulse can easily shift towards it is I mean, I'm the one that's going to do it, rather than I'm going to play a part to help save the world.
yeah, and I mean, there's probably all sorts of conspiracies out there, but um, I would say that the ARC conference was him joining into a network of trying to spread that out, to take his influence and spread it out. Like I think he was pushing down some to like spread this out, and try to coalesce and um, but he had also taken that opportunity to raise people up, like other people. And
Do you know,
what do you? So here's my question: like, what do you? So man, yeah, I used to get so much out of Peterson, but now he's such a sellout, or he's just normie or whatever. And it's like, what do you want him to do? What do you want him to do? Do you want him to just speak to a subculture for the rest of his life because it makes you, hey,
could
Hezi,
you see?
I'm gonna get it right this time. Hezi, uh, do you want to get it right? Do you want him to just like exist based off of his past fumes, or do you want him to like get another vision forward and try to take what's happened and continue and like push it out? Like I think that is that's how I see it.
I really like, and I find your framing of the art conference really helpful, as Peterson trying to connect into a larger network and raise others to
Yeah,
that. That's really helpful. Um,
because what do you want him to do?
but I think the reaction people have against it is the network is plugging himself into, it seems to be on the political plane more so than the religious plane. And I think that was the criticism with the Daily Wire thing. But to
Yeah,
your point, you get to the art conference, probably one of the biggest things come out of that conference was Peugeot pointing out that everyone in the room was basically Christian.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
being so that that's also a part of the
But even to the point of Daily Wire is explicitly, they don't make Christian content, but they are explicit Christians or Jews. Like they're not hiding. That's not like, hey, we're gonna, you know. So
you can't make the decision to join Daily Wire and be shocked that your audience reacts the way they do, because Daily Wire is explicitly a cultural war arena.
yeah, I guess that's what I say. They have been more completely politically based in their approach. They're moving away from that currently, um, and but that the criticism of him being like overtly political, again, I have to ask the question of what do you want him to do?
Did you see his conversation with? I don't know who it was, but it was one of when was this? I think it was after it made the Twitter comment about the trans X-Men girl. I don't remember her name now.
Ellen Page.
That's the
All right,
one.
don't get me canceled, but yeah, Elliot
Don't,
Page.
how dare you, dead name.
Elliot Page.
Anyway, yeah, he made very crass comments about her, and then he had a conversation with one of his boys. One of his boys. Funny thing to say about grown men. Yeah, he had a conversation with his friend who is similar Democrat, and um, that was explaining to him why people on the left had a problem with Peterson.
Hmm.
Did you? I'm not. If you,
I feel like I might have, but
yeah,
it's
I
not
think
like coming up strong.
PBK pointed to it as well in a video, but in that, it's I was with the friend that was making the point that you can't make a very right wing statement and be surprised when your
Yeah.
left wing audience are not vibing with you the way they can. And he also said that what Peterson was great at was balancing those, excuse me, balance, doing a better job balancing those two sides of the open, why we need to be the openness of the left and also the rigidness of the right. Like he was very good at pulling those two things together. Well, in the earlier stages, this was what the friend was saying. I don't know if this is true, but this was the point the friend was making. And I think that's what the people that are disappointed in Peterson now, that's what they're missing. It's that we need both sides isn't about Peterson, not so much the fuck the other side stance that the Daily Wire seems to be taken.
Well, I mean that it's not seems to. That's that's their explicit goal. But like, I think the thing is he was. You're nobody's static. You know what I'm like. The Peterson of 2016-17, he might have had more liberal inclinations that he doesn't have anymore either. And for whatever reasons, um, and people that were more conservative in 2016 or 17 might have more liberal inclinations now because people just aren't static. And
That's a fair point.
and so and there's reasons why those things happen. People in your life, and that's the other piece about Peterson is like just like all of us, like he is on his own journey, and he's headed somewhere like we all are in a with a telos. Like he he's and that's leading him wherever he's going. And I mean, I still think that most of his greatness is based off of his seminal work. Like his maps of meaning is still like that's still basically everything. And his what he was doing with his two subsequent books was popularizing a lot of that in a more digestible form because it's a college textbook. It's not very approachable, but like and it's like well he has to fight. What does it mean for him to take on the biggest load that he can when and try to carry it forward like he encouraged in the as he's entered into the last season of his life like what's can I create a coalition I don't know if it's art conference or I think it's a lot of things but dude I was listening to I don't know what it was. It was somebody talking about it was Pierce Morgan and Chris Wallace Williamson. Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom was on Pierce Morgan's YouTube channel today or yesterday, published. And I just all of a sudden I had this sense like because they said something about culture, or maybe it was even like that girl who's on Daily Wire, something about cancel culture losing power. And I just was thinking about how after Elon Musk bought X, and there's this like massive like exodus and this massive defeat of like I think people I like the Twitter files are nuts, man. Like and the world just kept going. The Twitter files are nuts and the world just kept going. So, okay, fine. Everyone's going to ignore it. It changed something. Like it took the power out of like it literally took the power out of something. And now people can get on there, for better and for worse, like and they're not really worried. That fear, the power that spirit held over the West of cancellation and stuff, kind of like dissipated. And
That's interesting.
like you can feel it, man. And so like what there are a lot of different forces that play that allowed that to happen. But I think like even the fact that all those people raised their hand at art conference and there's a talk about safe spaces and stuff, like I don't know. I just think I was just struck by that tonight because there was like I was all of a sudden just like, no, like you're at least not gonna get kicked off Twitter. Like that's a weird, and I think it's just taken like it's been what almost a year since that's happened, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but
No, I find it interesting. So the Twitter thing is definitely very interesting because I do see on one side there are people that are jubilant about the takeover of Elon, and then there are those that truly lament uh, what Twitter has now become in their eyes. And
well, that's the thing. I was like, there is a certain like energy that's left Twitter. It's not. It is now not everybody trying to play in Twitter in a way. But it's not a war. It's not a war zone anymore.
it is
Huh? It is. I mean, it is, but like not to.
just yeah, I'm not gonna say too much because yes, it still is, but I do get what you're saying. I was never really a big Twitter user pre. I deleted Twitter in 2014 or 15 during my college like uni days, and I didn't go back to it for ages. I had a Twitter account, but it was purely to look for football transfer news. That was the only reason I
Yeah,
kept it. So I wasn't as aware of the warring days of Twitter when everyone was going back and forth. I can imagine during the Trump administration was probably hell for everyone involved. So yeah, that
I
energy.
I was off Twitter until 2020, from 2016 to 2020, and when I dropped in, I almost lost my mind. I went crazy, like for like a year.
Yeah, to
And
be fair, 2020 wasn't a great time though. Was that was everyone had time on their hand to get on Twitter.
well, what happened is where I was working, there was a tornado coming through, and I was on my way, and I was like, I know that
Symbolism.
symbolism happens. I was, but I was like, I know that if I get on Twitter, I can get the news like that. And so I was like, and I live an hour and 15 minutes from where I work. So I was like, I'm gonna figure out what's going on before I get there. And I was also working at a hospital, so I was worried about like if there was damage, people needing to go to the hospital. So I was like, I yeah, I hopped on, and then it was just like that was in like March. That was like it was literally
That back then we still didn't even know if whether this was a deadly virus. Oh, that's what everyone virus. In
you know
March, everyone we were seeing the
yeah
pictures from Italy, the
it.
hospital collapsed. We were all
Well,
going to be dead in
dude,
6 months.
I went out and bought a safe, like a box of supplies, and put it in my house, and
We were washing fruits.
yeah, man. Oh, it's funny though because one of them I put up in my attic, and then like we pulled it out a year later, and there was dead mice in there. It
Oh,
was so gross. It was so gross. And because there was like rice packets or something in there. But yeah, man, Twitter is it's just the steam like, and I think it's just not there. People just left, and some people just use it as a reposter. They're not engaging on there,
that's
But
me.
and I don't know. But the infrastructure's still all there, and the power of it is still there, and so um, but and I guess Elon could still be. I mean, he could turn into just like Peterson or anybody else. Live, you're the hero long enough to be live. You're the hero long enough that you'll become the villain or whatever.
But he
Uh,
is already a villain. That's what I found out is from my quote unquote work friends. He's pretty much the devil.
why is he the devil? I
uh,
know why, but I want you to tell me why.
because he's not as compassionate as they would like him to be. That's always the reason. It always goes back to you're just not compassionate enough to the people that would like you to be compassionate towards in the way that wants to be compassionate towards them. It's it's always very
Yeah,
specific.
but it's interesting though because he has done the most for green energy as far as and for like
That
the
was my response to them. I was this
and the
is news
second
to me.
and he gave away the battery patent.
This
And
yeah, but
and then the other piece of that too is the space travel thing is like science. Oh, secular science. Yay, science, science, science. Like, well, here's your dude. Fuck that guy. It's like
yeah, that shows you some things are more important than science. Like the things that are sacred to us is not whether or not we can
we
have a fast green car or a rocket that gets us to Mars.
I know, but it's like but that's just so wild because it's like one or the other and like well you need to go solve the world hunger problem or no you need to solve the homeless problem. Well, I'm trying to solve the space problem before China and Russia or I'm trying to solve the internet problem or like
Okay, see, this is remember when we were talking about celebrity culture in evangelicalism?
yes, bring it all back around Tay.
Same thing applies right here. It's the you either you live die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. That applies in Christendom as much as it applies in
Mm-hmm.
the science and entrepreneur community. Because you're right, there was a point when Elon was seen as the prince of peace. That
Yeah.
felt gross coming out of my mouth, but that's the role he played in those communities. And then the Overton window moved, and some people moved with it, some didn't, and then that's what we're trying to figure out is okay, where is this new thing? What are the values by which we judge what is good and what and who is good, and who
Yeah.
what are what values are we looking for in the people that we put up
But
as
it's not just the Overton window moving. Like it's people also doing this at the same time. Like the window may be shifting in that, but like I mean, Elon's not static either.
Mhm.
He didn't just stay. Maybe he was more left at one point in a way or whatever. Um, and we just get mad when our team loses type thing, you know?
Okay, but what's the question I'm trying to ask? It's I think it goes back to the question K-Fabe asked earlier about when things get too big. So I'm sure you know who Francis Chan is and his story, and they're walking away from the height and saying, I look down. It's a long form. I'm just gonna walk back down this way and see if I can build better going downwards than trying to increase it. Is that the move, or is the move to do the Peterson thing, get more reach to more people, but also that comes with
I mean, is
an
Francis
equal
Chan still down in the valley? That's
sorry?
Is Francis Chan still down in the valley? I don't think he is.
No, I don't think he ever made it back down to the valley. That's the thing. He was up on the mountain and said, "I'm going back down," and then no one ever let him down. But it did
Wait,
after climb upwards because then it started doing more ecumenical things that
yeah,
everyone
that's true.
like said, "What are you doing with those Catholics over there?"
Yeah, I
So,
remember the Catholic thing. He apologized, like he was with Audrey Assad and who's the guy, the songwriter, pop songwriter who's Catholic. Oh, they had a conversation about kind of a coming to understanding, or he where he used to be more back, like that whole thing.
mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think. I think the Jordan Hall thing is going to be interesting because I think that that's a better picture of that
A better picture of
coming down the mountain.
hmm. Yeah, I saw your gesturing at, and I think I agree.
And um, we'll see what happens at this conference.
I'm really there are so many things I'm more looking forward to the reports back from the conference. I don't plan on watching the online stream of the conference, but I'm curious about the experience of Peterson, how that changes his association with what's going on in underneath him. Um, I'm curious about the I'm curious about Grim Grizz's report back with being surrounded by a bunch of author bros. And I'm curious about your experience as the first embodied conference that you're going to after becoming a minor celebrity. But I think you're more a celebrity in the
Said,
PVK of the corner than the Symbolic Ward corner of the corner.
yeah,
And Peugeot's explicitly is trying not to make a community, which is so silly because it's YouTube. Communities gather around you whether you want them to or not.
yeah.
But
He's a.
say that again.
My other tab started playing audio. I was gonna say, I think with the thing about Peugeot, he's not like, does he manage his YouTube anymore? Like, does he get in the comments, and does he, because he doesn't ever respond to anything on there. So like, and symbolicworld.com has a community. They have like essays and um, feedback, and I think he engages in that. And like I said, like I think at least 98% of the platform is Orthodox. So, um, but what I always love about Peugeot is that he never says go to an Orthodox church unless he's saying, yeah, check one out. Like for the art, he's not ever he's saying go to church. He always just says go to church. Um, and one of the biggest examples of that was when he was on Russell Brand back in December, and Russell's talking to him about Rick Warren and the prayer of Jabez. Do you know about that one? That's like late '90s evan stuff. The prayer of Jabez was both of
Oh,
those things are, honestly, is this little book, and this guy put out a bunch of them. I can't remember. Prayer of Jabez by, I can't remember who the author is, but it's interesting because it's kind of like a liturgical thing, like praying this simple prayer over and over again. But it's so funny that whoever's feeding Russell Brand this like 90s evangelical stuff, and but you know what, like,
Probably a Gen X,
yeah, Gen X somebody, but it's like, but you know what Peugeot didn't do was shit on that. Like your typical ortho trad bro would. Like that would be where they pounce. And so like he has, and he was, you know, an evangelical missionary. So he has like other things in that. But um yeah, that's right, mostly. Expand my territory. Oh. I think that was part of the Jabez prayer. And me and Mostly Not Working have like a very like, we're both the same age, and we apparently we're
Wait,
like,
has Mostly ever been on camera?
I'm not gonna speak for him.
Because that's the most proficient meme maker on Twitter.
I'm not gonna speak for him.
I'm on Twitter mainly for the jokes and the no, I'm on Twitter mainly for the jokes. I'm there mainly for the
I
jokes.
just know that he gets evangelical culture like he has like his finger on that. Like we were cut from the same cloth on that stuff.
Yeah.
But Jonathan's doing something a little different. He has he is more ecumenical. Uh, he just is. He has been. That might change.
I think it's wise that Jonathan is consciously trying not to form a community on YouTube, because if anyone is likely to ascend to cult leader status, Jonathan's the most likely, because of the nature of what it does and the esoteric nature of the conversation that's being had. I can easily see a bunch of crazy quote unquote author bros declaring Jonathan the leader, and I think is trying to avoid that by being explicit about, no, this is not a community. Go to church.
Yeah, and because here's what I think about that. I think he believes so much in the journey and the pattern that he knows that you're going to get where you need to go if you're in a genuine pursuit. Like that he's not worried if you don't drop into an Eastern Orthodox church in Arkansas. So like, and it's not even possible for some people, you know, like, and I think he also sees that church as being more of the top of the hierarchy. I mean, you know, high church, low church. Like, so if you want to journey up the hierarchy of meaning within your Christian faith, he thinks you'll end up closer to that anyways. So I just don't think he's that concerned about that. I wonder if he is. I'm sure he's a. Actually, I think I saw him like clap back to an ortho bro on Twitter yesterday. I could be wrong, but like basically like you need to like go and embody life a little bit, dude, because I because maybe someone was like shit posting on Matt on his brother's Twitter or something,
Uh,
and it like
because my theory is not orthodox, is he?
and I think it was an ortho bro guy like, and so it's like he also has like, do you know what I mean? Like he sees that shadow there too, probably, and so yeah, and that's part of the red. I think that's probably manosphere, red pill, super trad type stuff happens. That's on there too. But
What you watched a Ruslan conversation with Peugeot?
I watched most of it. I didn't watch the full one. I watched like the 2 or 3 10-minute clips that they put out or whatever.
I couldn't even get through those. Which is crazy because Ruslan was like one of my favorite rappers, but back when he was making music regularly, and then he was very early with this whole YouTube thing and figuring out how to do Christian YouTube. So that's my way of transitioning into talking to you about Christian YouTube and the journey Christian YouTube is going on, where
I
it's
don't.
been.
Let me see of what I can think of, like what I can conjure. I actually did this little thing today. So there's this evangelical conference going on in Texas right now called If Gathering for Women, and I'm aware of it because of like my wife and some of the platform speakers I kind of knew of and whatever. But they don't have anything current. Like the recent post is 11 months ago from last year's conference or whatever. Like, this was also the part of me that was feeling this. Like, a lot of when people say Christian YouTube, I pretty much think that that's Instagram now. Like, I don't think that there's actually a lot of Christian YouTube left.
Uh, that's a good point. That
And
is
so
a good
like people like it's kind of there's like I see myself and I've lived in the liminal space for like my whole life. Like there's YouTube and Twitter Christian and there's Instagram and Facebook Christian. And that's not I don't think that's bad. Like I just think that these two things are kind of they work together and then these two things work together. I mean there's business reasons for that, but um it's also that this has been more of the space. I mean, I think there's the spirit of the masculine and the feminine partially is part of that. And I think that there was a something Luke Thompson pointed out. There's these really like attractive female YouTubers. Oh, Girls Gone Bible, and they interviewed somebody who said he's going to quit cussing, and he was talking about it. But like, I don't know because I'm not seeking it out. Other than Ruslan, like he shows up in my stuff because I think that he's on a journey. He got invited to ARC. That was the thing that fascinated me, and now he's pushing Peterson and Peugeot out. He got something. Like he got something there that shook him. And he also said that I didn't realize this, but because he might be Syrian. I can't remember. He's something.
He's Armenian.
He's Armenian, and he was raised when he was very young. He was Oriental Orthodox,
Hmm.
and so like
With very bad experience.
yeah, so like, but that's he meets Jonathan, who's an evangelical who became Orthodox.
Dude, I remember must have been like when I first discovered PVK and all of this really cool stuff. I remember like leaving a comment on one of Rislan's video back when I was still watching them quite regularly. Like, bro, what do you think of all of this orthodox migration going on because you're Orthodox? And he was like, I think it's amazing. Like more people becoming Christians is a good thing. And so that intersection of Rislan with Peugeot to me is very interesting. Like
It
if
is. It's
yes,
really interesting because he's straight up evangelical. Like I mean, in that whole scene. But as I think what's happening right now, I'm as Christian YouTube has exited Christian YouTube, who's left for him to talk about that's going to get him clicks?
that's interesting. I didn't even think about that actually. That
I
is
just
interesting.
thought about it. Like Peterson and Peugeot are going to get him some clicks, baby. Like
Okay, so what's the tell us of Instagram and TikTok and Twitter Christians? Are they in the same vein? You said one was masculine, one was feminine. Are they the feminine?
yeah, I mean aesthetics
No, I'm not
as
paying attention.
what?
I'm not paying attention to the. Actually, they do come across my Instagram feed once in a while, but I don't know enough to
Aesthetics
text.
and then you also have like so multi-level marketing on Facebook was a very feminine project, and then it was leveraging. I mean, you could even call what Grimm and others would call leveraging the shadow matriarchy, or shadow matriarchy.
Yeah,
I feel like that is in that space. I think that um, like when I've been on, I'm of the age where Facebook came out in '06, 05, and I had a college email because I was in college when Facebook came out, so I'm a Facebook native.
Okay,
And,
boom.
yeah, and so what Facebook is for me is all the people from high school and college posting pictures of their vacation and of their family and of something cool that they, and it's also pretty community centric, like a lot of hometown stuff information I get is through Facebook for like my Instagram is more of the hipsters, the hipster millennials is home on Instagram, and that's where Christian YouTube would like. Ruslan's a hipster millennial. He might be a little older, but like that's all there at with, and it like I have friends like the last guy who played drums for me is a drummer for basically the biggest Christian rock band in CCM right now, and so like
Who is the biggest Christian rock band in CCM right now?
I'm not gonna
Wait,
say
wait,
who
wait. Can I couldn't even guess.
I know, but it's very CCM.
I am so out of touch. I would have 10 years ago. I would have told you exactly who's on the chart.
But the Christian, so my point is, and then the guy who played bass for me, he works for Sony BMG as he's their creative, he's like creative director for their Christian branch. So like, and Instagram, and they were Instagram influencers 10 years ago. They shot up to like 20,000 subs, and when my buddy's got a couple 100,000 subs, like, but that's that whole world, man. And none of it like this this space is, because even like drumming, like all the music is evaporating out of YouTube to Instagram too. So that's why I kind of feel like this X, Twitter, and YouTube are almost resetting themselves in a way, um, that is because that's how it kind of feels to me in a way. I It's not exactly true because everyone's still everywhere in a certain way, but like, and I can't even speak to TikTok because I've never had one. So
Okay, good. We'll leave that to the teenagers. Let them figure TikTok out. I tapped out Instagram because I can't do this. Snapchat was one that I was like, this is, yeah, I'm too old. I'm getting too old for this shit. But I do think that's interesting that you said who's Ruslan going to talk to now. That's a fair point because you've spoken to the Alan Parrs, the Mike Wingers, the.
oh, okay. So Christian
Do you,
YouTube would be apologetics. Propositional apologetics are a huge part of Christian YouTube. But that's all burning out too because like the time that really mattered was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and that's when I was hungry for, a John Lennox debate with Richard Dawkins, and like and those were those arguments. I mean, people still are going to face up those arguments, but I think that's why T-Grog's on Grail Country.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
So it's like that's all dried up, man. And
It's drying up. I don't think it's dried up. That's why we've got Tigrak to remind us that it's modernity might be receding, but there are still some people to it. It's still real to them. God damn it.
oh, sorry.
Kayfabe, this is not going to be a popular opinion, but the Christian presence on social media and even in politics has left me saying over and over again, what do you mean when you say you're a Christian? Christian, you can answer that.
I think it's culture. You're propagating a part of a culture, like, and there's some Christianity in it, and there's a lot of Christianity that's not in it. But like, it's more about propagating, and I will say, like,
What's the Christianity that's in it?
well, scripture, like there's gonna be people that even look Russell Brand, like he's looking at purpose driven life and the prayer of Jabez. I'm like, but I don't knock that stuff. I mean, there's a story about a guy that robbed a house, and the girl in there had purpose driven life on the coffee too. This is the myth. And then he picks it up and he like ends up like becoming a Christian and leaving the house or something, like but the thing is like what is the Christian in there? Yeah, I think it's going to be scripture, and I think that there are honest and earnest and genuine people, and there are not honest and earnest and genuine people. And that's just the way it's going to be. And there's people that are going to come from a place of real transformation, and there's people that are promoting themselves with that from a false self that it's going to have to take failure for them to be able to promote from a genuine or to try to come at it from a genuine place. And that's just everything, because even in this space, everyone's putting on, I mean, everyone, we're all putting on stuff out here, and people are going to let you down.
Kayfib, you're making some great points if you're able to join us, because I think that's an important thing. So
Here's another one.
is it Ortho, MAGA, Trad Wives? This becomes branding and marketing, and it doesn't process in my mind as a Christian myself.
So that's big time on Instagram, I think, is promoting in Mormonism, and I think in Christianity, like modesty and like crunchy farm life, but they're posting it on their techno phones, and it's like it's all a grasp. It's all I say it's all. A lot of it is a grasp at everybody's reaching backwards right now. Because this is the thing, like I even feel this with the modern worship, like reaching back towards a historical modesty or a traditional family framework, like because everything's like burning out. And I saw this at Passion this year, and I'm experiencing it even as to how I'm leading worship right now. The biggest, most powerful part of Passion this year, Tayo, was a 20-minute repeat of Agnus Dei. Do you know that song?
That's absolutely bang at that. It's hallelujah.
Yeah, but that song, like that's like from the 90s. And then Mac Powell from Third Day made it popular again in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And because even Passion artists who are now my age, that are me and Christian Stanfield are the same age. And like I was at Passion in 2006 when he came out and played Jesus Paid It All. And when he did, he was 19 and I was 19, and I was like, why does he get to do that? Oh, because he lives in Atlanta and he's tapped into the network. So it's like that took me, 5 years to figure out. But the thing is that he's up there now as he's Daddy Papa Passion. He's 40 now. And what's he reaching to, and what creates the most powerful moment in the thing is when he reached back 20 years into his past to a genuine place. And so these ortho trad, all of it, we're all reaching backwards. Like I told you, I played as the deer. Like when I'm thinking of at a church, and I'm thinking that there's people that are teenagers and there's people that are 70 in my little group, and I'm thinking, what?
That's amazing.
And I'm thinking, man, and people belted as the deer this Sunday, like, and there's 30 of us, and it was like, and then they belted Oceans, and they tried to sing along on the gospel song that they didn't know because it was a gospel song, and it was not a hard song, but it's like, and when I say gospel, I mean like it tells the gospel story, not like American gospel genre. So like, I'm like reaching back to the things that I like, because I was raised like in solid evangelical. Like I could only listen to Christian rock in the '90s. I was only allowed to listen to Christian rock, and when I was a baby, like all my parents were listening to was Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant in the '80s, and Stephen Curtis Chapman. Like
Stephen Curtis still slaps.
oh yeah, and so like I can reach back into this evangelical world, and I can reach back into my Baptist hymns, and and um and it's but I lived through the only going forward, and there's still people trying that, but passion showed like that's about. And not only passion, you know what happened before passion last year?
No.
Asbury College Revival.
Yes.
And so what happened at Asbury College Revival, you know, Louis Giglio showed up to that, Carrie Job showed up to that, everybody showed up to that. And what did they see? People singing songs that they could remember on guitar, that everybody in the room could sing, that without chord sheets and everything. And that's a unifying principle. Like, what can we and that's what unified the beginning of the modern worship movement anyways, was that these songs that were easy to sing, that swept across, you know, a generation and through some weird social network at the time. And yeah, so everyone's reaching backwards right now, whether we're reaching to the Middle Ages or the '90s, we're reaching backwards. So, or to the Desert Fathers, everybody's reaching backwards. And so
is that because things are falling apart so quickly around us?
I wouldn't know because he's blocked me.
Well, let's see. What's it been tweeted about? There you go.
I'm bringing it on, my man. Okay, let's see if I can read this.
Okay, so that's the pinned tweet. Oh gosh, when did they start? Let's go to it.
He's back.
Oh gosh. All right, so he's shilling for Elon Musk. You clearly won that interview, Jordan.
You know what's funny is whenever he gets on a tangent. Right now, the tangent is that AI is fucking broke.
Oh,
what
God.
happened? What happened to Gmail? Did he get that Xmail up and running?
Why is this man on Twitter, bro? Put your phone down.
Good bloody riddance. There it is. Good bloody riddance. He's back.
The faster the woke media finishes its own well-deserved, bro. Your battle with the woke is boring to me. What else you got? Like the part where all the hypocrites snap their fingers. I can't believe these people don't vomit themselves.
He had too much to drink tonight.
The red wine was flowing.
His team said, Jordan, no. Jordan, don't pick up your phone.
Just the funniest Jordan is when he starts threatening people. Destroy it, puppet. Oh gosh. Prison for the butchers. I agree with that. That's yes.
And that's y'all are dealing with that even.
God preserve us from toxic femininity, truly. I don't even need to know what he's commenting on, but he's on one today.
That's your president.
So can you see just from this tweet?
Dude.
Mostly, that's hilarious. Drop the link to the string to his exit if you will join. Oh, could you imagine Peterson coming onto you? Do you know what? That would track for your channel. 2 weeks later, you've got Peterson on a live stream with 4 people watching.
What's funny is Kezi was like after my Jordan Hall one, he goes, "Who's next, Peterson?" That was his comment. But
Oh,
you know who commented below that?
yeah,
Jordan Hall said he's gonna be at the summit.
he is. Oh, I saw you. Was there a post that you say you're thinking about taking our mini podcast studio to the summit?
Yeah, I've got my camera that died earlier, and I brought my little audio rig. I That one's just gonna have to be if God says so. That's what I was talking to my. I've got my my real life friends. You know that as this stuff starts to churn, like when I had that conversation with Jordan, I needed like some people to help me because I got really like overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And a buddy of mine, um, he's my most spiritual friend, and we were talking about the summit, and I was like, I'm thinking about doing this, but I just don't know, like, if I'm coming at it from like, I don't know if this is me trying to be like, this is my chance to make something happen, or, um, or is this like this could actually be really cool, and I could like do this, and like maybe somebody would sit down and be like, I'm in the VIP room, and like, oh, here's Grizz, or oh, look, there's Jonathan. Hey, come say hi to some people. Like, just like, could it be an honest thing? Um, or but then also I'm like carrying around all this gear in my backpack that I don't want to carry around, and I'm trying to just like be present. So there's a lot of things kind of going on inside my mind about like how to approach that, if that's um, even what but I'm gonna have some stuff that I could throw together a little thing on a. If I could find a table and a power outlet, I could probably do it. So um,
Yeah. Justin Wells had the confession booth at Chino, which was
tell me
actually.
about that, because I just had a podcast with him. I'm releasing tomorrow.
Oh, I'm
That
excited. I've got like 2 podcasts recorded with them that I've not re-released because I'm still iffy about starting a channel or not. I mean, I've started the channel, just haven't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah,
so
at Chino,
this
he
is
had this.
he didn't tell me this in our conversation. We talked about confession hardcore.
He had a he had a room where people could just go in. They can write their name if they want to, and if they don't, they can just be anonymous and basically just talk about how they got to the place where they're going to, how they got to Chino. Why are you here? What are you doing? What's your story? Just tell your story about what brought you here and just tell your story. And that was quite popular. Quite a few people did that. And I think it's part of the audio that is going to use for the documentary that he's working on.
Hmm. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that too. But yeah, I don't know. I Earlier before you got on here, I was talking about because Grim was like, well, if I had to, one of those DW Daily Wire crews to follow me around, I was like, I could do that. But I don't know if I want to spend all my time focused on Grim.
I
Like,
promise you wouldn't be able to. At some point, it's just going to disappear. Like you'll be there a second, and then it's just going to disappear. That
yeah,
was Rizzacino. We'll all that,
he has to keep the mystique, man. That's part of the shtick.
and people are overwhelming. He's clearly a loner. Like
Yeah,
much better to be alone than to a sea of 200 people.
yeah. I like going to places by myself because I don't feel like I have to take care of anybody.
Me too. It's one of my favorite things.
And like my wife's like, I just don't understand that. I'm like, I've had the best experiences of my life going to places by myself, like, and crafting this thing and just responding, not being like, hey, I've got to wait for so and so because I was too insecure to come myself. I needed him, but now I'm having, like that whole thing. But at the same time, like I'm wrestling inside of myself and just like how I want to approach being there, because I am coming at it from a different headspace than I would have 10 years ago. Um,
I think the best. Let me give you some advice as an experienced.
bring
I've
it.
been, I've been to one conference, so I now I'm now an expert with all the wisdom on how to get the best. Maybe that's my first video, how to get the best out of a conference. Anyway, it's the people. It's not going to be the speakers. The speakers are cool. Like
Yeah.
some of them might have impactful speeches and presentations, but what's going to make it are the friends you're going to make as part of the audience,
Hmm.
and that's way more precious than
Yeah.
because that will outlast. I mean, I just got a message yesterday from Ozzy Johnny, who I met and really built up great friendship over a Chino, and that's more precious than any talk that Viveki or Peugeot gave.
Sure. I think. I mean, yeah.
And you'll be surprised how many people would recognize you.
Me.
Hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if I haven't put a lot of thought into that. I think that thought crossed my mind this past weekend,
Yeah,
and
the and that's another strange thing. It's like, oh, and I didn't even have a YouTube channel, but it was like, I've
but
seen you.
you've been on Grail Country.
I've seen you on the stream before. Like, yes, yes, you have.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Um,
What did I wrote something down that I wanted to ask? Oh yeah, Christian Network in Atlanta.
Christian Stanfield.
I just wrote Christian Network in Atlanta. Oh, that was with regards to the evangelical, how to rise up the worship
Yeah.
evangelical.
So all of that was happening out of Atlanta in America initially. You had Hillsong and you had Passion,
Hmm.
and then but you had Delirious and Matt Redman up in the UK. Like that was kind of
Yeah,
that was
we what's this? Soul Survival. That was
yeah,
like
that sounds familiar.
that's the hub for where a lot of those were.
Okay, so yeah, so those
Yeah.
were the three networks, and then the mega churches in America started modeling Hillsong and Elevation.
Elevation, yeah.
They pulled up into the music. They put all their energy into music in the same way that, but they also had a dynamic. The dude Stephen Furtick, um, and they were pouring all of their energy into that music thing, trying to do what Hillsong's, and then they've superseded Hillsong now as far as like influence, I think. But Passion was the original American project, like worship, modern worship. Chris
Mm.
Tomlin, David Crowder, Charlie Hall, Matt Redman were kind of the beginning of all that, and that all was basically happening down in Atlanta, and so there was a college and young adults ministry Lou Giglio started adjacent to North Point, which was Andy Stanley's church in Atlanta, and it was called 722. And I don't remember, it's probably scripture verse, but like there was basically they were having passion for young adults. To pull off high production value with a rock band and video and lyrics in 2006 and 7 took massive amounts of energy,
Mm.
and uh like to get the formula right, because it was so
It's a big production.
well. It's not only that, there is a there was a formula, like the modern worship thing, and it's still a lot of it still is based off of it,
A
especially live.
formula for the show or for the song or all of the above?
What do you mean all of the others was a Hillsong album, so that's why I was confused. But like the
No. Oh, yeah, it is. I meant that you saying there's a formula to how to have a good like a passion, how to throw a passion type conference, or you saying there's a formula to how to make a passion type music?
yeah, the music. They're and a lot of because it's basically U2 over and over again. Like they're like Streets Have No Name and uh what's the other big one, With or
Fix
Without
you.
You. Yeah, well that's Coldplay. So Coldplay
You too.
like
Mm.
that, and then the guitar player for Hillsong, Nigel Droffin, he's got a weird name. He looks like he's Kiwi or something, like,
I
but
think I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
he created a signature sound, but it was built on top of Coldplay, built on top of U2,
All right.
and 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 there's a way to mix the music that a lot of churches are just now in the last 5 years figuring out how to do this. Like most places can do this now, but it's like taken 15 years for
For
that
that
to
spread
so for that knowledge to like, and I tapped into it
early.
early, and I was learning the songs I like everyone was still trying to do what Chris Tomlin did, and then there was the Hillsong thing, and that's
What's the difference
still
between the two?
acoustic guitar driven versus electric guitar driven, and then
Okay.
like um, rock versus it's basic. The difference is basically U2 and Matchbox 20.
I don't even think I know either of. Don't think I know a single U2 song. Now that I'm thinking about it. I always get them mixed up with Coldplay.
Well, okay, it's the difference between Coldplay and Matchbox 20. Do you know who Matchbox 20 is?
That's the next problem. I'm very low on my white people music.
Okay, let me. Do you know that song Iris by Goo Goo
Yes.
Dolls?
Yes.
It's the difference between that and Coldplay.
Okay. I see what you're pointing at. I see what you're gesturing to.
I
So,
and that was like Gen X versus Millennial.
yeah.
And so, it's a pattern.
That's fascinating.
And so if you could make that change musically between like, because the impulse everywhere I would go was to turn up the acoustic guitar. That's right. The impulse for every place I would go, because I was the guy in front, was to make me the loudest instrument. And that's actually the wrong impulse. It's actually like the kick drum and the bass guitar actually need to be like, and there's like, I can feel that. And that's the other part. Here's the other part of it. The Holy Spirit is in the kick drum and the bass guitar, not in the electric guitar, not in the acoustic guitar. And because that's
I
what you.
love the fact that we've located the location of the Holy Spirit.
Oh yeah, dude.
The mystery is over. We found it.
It's not. Yeah, man. It's not. That's the meat and potatoes of worship. Is the drums and the bass
Yeah,
guitar.
you're right. That's what gets all of the tingling
Yeah, it is,
sensation.
and that's transcendent. And there, I mean, it's a pattern. Those are musical patterns and frequencies, um,
Absolutely.
and there's certain tempos that are formulaic to get people to jump or clap, or to get people to feel uh, an intensity, or uh, what's the word I'm trying to think? Like
Elevated.
basically slow jam. Yeah,
Mhm.
something that's going to make you feel impassioned for something,
If
like.
if if we want to feel a little bit more solemn and sacredness in worship, you slow it
Yes,
right down.
yeah, yeah. But so what? I had this pedal, and you could tap the tempo in, and it was like I was like watching in real time this song get released. Okay, this one's at 120, and this one gets the people to do this. This one's at 72, and this is basically. And so every song that's at 72 is the fourth song in the set. Every song
Yeah.
that's at 120 is the first song in the set, and and you know, so but the reality is we can like poke fun at that, but the liturgical process is still like, it's still like mapping. There's parts of that map onto to the climax of the sacred point. And so it's not, I think that's why.
We've got our temples in Protestantism, and the Orthodox have their incense and their bells. We've all got our sacred technology too.
Yes, and it's, and so I'm not, I think that the transcendent,
What? As they bring shouting out Gyra. That is
oh no,
amazing.
Elevation, Maverick City, dude. It's I don't know what time it is in his time zone, but he's letting it loose. It's late night YouTube.
No, it's early morning for us on this side of.
Where's Chezzy at? Chezzy.
Guess where the young Levite is located?
Is he with you in the UK?
Oh, he's in Israel.
Oh, well, I mean, Gyra, I would assume Gyra, it's a non-six song, but it's good. Okay, so I was going to read into it. Like, Jehovah Jireh is like, I mean, God our provider, right? So there was a song.
I love that you can see through the nonsense and still find the beauty in the music.
See, that's interesting, isn't it? You know, that's the excellent, like, what they're like. It's easy to poke fun at to walk into a church in you know, in a town in Southern Illinois that's got a couple of people. You got a girl that knows how to play hymns on the keyboard. You got a guy that listened to grunge rock in the 90s. You got another guitar player that you're just asking to play bass, but he doesn't really play bass. And you got two girls that can't sing harmony, but they're going to play all the newest songs. That is, and then people are like, yeah, contemporary worship is like, I've been to some of those churches, and it's not. I'm like, it means I'll see. Okay, I'll put this up.
Amen.
If you see that song, it's clear God is in the room. Boy, I was listening to some Charismatics in the 80s saying, Jehovah Jireh, our provider, his grace is sufficient for. And so, like, that's what I always thought it meant.
Yeah.
It probably just rhymed real good. But that is not the same thing. And that's why I say I feel like it's a lot closer to a really ordered orthodoxy. Like what you're seeing when Hillsong is doing something, generally, like in a conference setting or in a video, is so highly produced with such care that's like, if you believe that the presence is real in the Eucharist, you're going to do this thing like with high amounts of care and high amounts of majesty. And that's why I think they're way closer than, you know, an average Protestant experience. Or, you know, what do you think about that?
About what specifically?
Like if you go to like a church that's got like 150 people and the praise band's up there playing the latest song and it's not played that well or sung that well, that probably is a lot less majestic than an Orthodox service. But you know what's pretty dang majestic is 60,000 people singing X, you know, Hillsong, whatever.
That's music's like it's one of my favorite ways of ascending. That elevation that we spoke about earlier, I love tapping into music that affords me a space to ascend and feel quote unquote closer to God. I think the cliche in those circles is the presence of the Lord is here today. That's always how every worship starts. And I think it's true because where two or more gathered, promise. And also because I get moved by seeing other Christians around me. That's that'll get me whirled up because I'm like, oh, they believe too. They do believe too. Like that's the testimony of the
That's
saints
testimony. Yeah, that's testimony.
truly fueled my faith because my favorite prayer is I believe of my unbelief, and those testimonies do of my unbelief. Um, so in that context, some could be good, some could be meh, could be it's the lyrics that do it for me. It's the I can grab onto the words in the song. And those worship songs, some of them, like I said, Joe Houston's top 5 songwriters of all time because so many times he's just said the things that my soul is crying out for. And I do not take those for granted at all. And I
Mm.
do take those as something akin to how the Catholics see the Eucharist. Uh, I think the worship plays a very similar role in Protestant churches. Now, I don't agree that that's the role it should play. I think we need to bring the Eucharist back to the center of all of it, maybe. Um, but there is a I'm not you're never going to catch me disparaging worship music because that's been the fuel for a lot of
Yeah,
my but I do agree that there is a difference between 150 or 80 people in a small singing versus the feeling you get where you're at a mega church and the production's crisp and everything's going exactly how it should be. The the beauty is clearer to see there in those settings.
yeah,
But I think that affords more transcendence, but I don't know if it rises to the sacred level that we were speaking about earlier.
yes. Uh, I think there's a big category distinction there, and the other piece of that is
Well, and also really quickly, I have to throw this in. I remember probably early 2010, some whenever in the teens probably I was at uni, so probably 15 or 16. I got a message from my Muslim friend who oh yeah, that's I posted a story of an Oceans was playing in the background. And she sent me a message like, "Oh, I love that song." This is a Muslim friend, and she's like, "It's like I cry to it and play it on my way to work every single day." She also grabbed onto the lyric, like she was going through a tough time in her personal life, and she just needed to know that God's got her, and that song was what she was holding on to. So yeah, those some of those musics do afford transcendence.
and that's what it is also, not just the transcendent experience, but you're talking about transcending culture. And that's where I'm with you, like in that argument. Um, the thing that I think that is that music actually can't hold the weight by itself. And when you do, and when it does, it crumbles. And that was my experience for this change from Baptist hymns to Baptist rock music that I witnessed, that I was a part of doing and undoing in my hometown, at my church I grew up in, the church I was married in.
I
When I
love
was
that you're in the doing and the undoing.
Yeah, so I was 16 and it's like youth night on a Sunday night and we're playing some third day songs and this deacon who's in his 60s, his face is turning red and he's just boiling. He finally just gets up and walks out. And I told this story on Kale's when I'm a podcast with Kale, but that's because the whole weight of meaning and worship is wrapped up in music in the evangelical church,
Yeah.
and it can't hold it all. Um, and it also you're so you can put scripture into music, but sometimes it's implicit, and it's just that there's a lot of opportunity. Um, there's a lot of what's this one? There's a lot of opportunity to infuse more meaning than just music. And this is coming from a guy who was a professional musician
Pastor.
for 15 years. Like, and that was I gave myself completely to it. And I mean, and even maybe my life is a testimony to that as well. But like, I was starting to hit on this before some of that unraveled for myself too. So, and that came from, again, marrying this family that had value for this liturgy thing. Like, I was like, I don't get it. And there's something to, it's the same thing that happens whenever you play a song so simple like Agnus Dei at Passion, and 60,000 people can say, Alleluia. When you have that acoustic moment in worship, that's built into a liturgy. Now, some people are mindlessly participating, and that's true, but there's still a unity of, even if it is, because that's the other thing that I think is also an issue is Sunday morning. I don't think Sunday morning is not built to be even. I don't even think Sunday mornings are a place where we're designed to give our full attention. And what I mean by that is you're never going to get everybody in a Sunday morning when you have a young mom with a baby, you have the dad who just cursed out his kid or acted out sexually the night before, is hungover, you have the teenager that doesn't give a rip. Like, Sunday's not, in my opinion, like where we should have the expectation in a way that everybody is just going to be here. But it's not just about here. It's also about like this. And if you can get somebody to tap into a confession or a creed that they can say from memory, that helps bring them out of that. It helps ground them in the moment. But if like it's just rock music that you're not participating in, that you're
Just an audience member.
then it's hard to tap in. And the flip side of that, let me see what these. Let's catch up here a little bit. Interestingly, someone who practices faith, I was raised in it. It's a quiet worship, certainly boring in comparison to what you guys are describing. That hits me. Well, still small voice maybe, and I, to that point, I'd say that there's also a personality type, because I'm an external processor and I need things to hit me loud. Like, I want to feel. And my wife is a highly sensorial, she like she doesn't like she's attracted to like folk, more like Americana. I want like a bass. I want to feel the bass drum in my chest. So I think that there's that. It's an aspect
Yeah,
of
I
it
think
too. It's not.
I'm more of an internal processor, and I align more with kayfabe and your wife in terms of the quieter ones.
Yeah.
And also the quieter ones, the lyrics just pierce a little bit more into my soul.
It often feels like extremely intimate, conscious connection to God, almost unbearably intense.
Amen.
And I would say that the opposite has happened for me. When things are like at a fever pitch, not necessarily like raw, but like, even if a song is slow and it has a insane guitar part and the melody's getting high, like that's not necessarily quiet, but it is a more somber or something. But I appreciate hearing this perspective. Um, I don't know that song. But the music's not. That's the thing about the orthodoxy that I see, is that there are more things holding the meaning than just word and song. And and I think that that's what I resonate with, but I'm still gonna like, I don't know Orthodox hymns, and I don't even know that many like Protestant hymns. Like, so like, and I don't like if y'all could hear my wife sing, y'all would. She can sing in a sacred manner,
Hmm.
and she always has been able to. And so like, there can be sacredness in oceans without it being transcendent in like a rock opera kind of thing. And so, but my main point is just that the music, in my opinion, can't. It's not built to hold the whole meaning of worship.
We're putting too much burden.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
can it carry a lot? Yes, it can.
I think I agree with that assessment. Yeah, there's quite a lot of because I so many times I'll go to a church and just the music would be the most meaningful part of it. I'll zone out during the preaching because it's not great preaching. But the music, I'm locked in, I'm tapped in, and then we don't have the Eucharist, so the music does the
It's
most
carrying
of
the
it,
whole. It's carrying the whole load. And I
which
don't. Yeah, go ahead.
that which explains why the egos of worship leaders can get inflated very quickly.
And the
And
preachers.
yeah,
Yeah, and because my experience when I started doing liturgy, where there was parts in the service where I would read and the church would respond, or then we would all read a creed together, or we would all read a confession of sin together, and then it was the first time, other than if you get everybody singing, which is really hard to do on a Sunday morning, some way, in some places, in some cultures, partially because people are waking up, coming to 9 o'clock service. I want you to sing like it's a rock concert. It's like, uh, so, but the I felt like it was outside of me because these weren't, for one, they weren't my words that I was coming up with, which that's the case with worship songs too. But extemporaneous prayer, that's on you. And there's nothing wrong with extemporaneous prayer at all. Um, but I liked that this wasn't. This is something that I can say is not me. And then when I got into a place where I was disconnected from God, I was kind of glad that there was still something that the church was having that wasn't me. Um,
mm. And something that ties you back to generations upon generations upon generations of believers who have also said those same words.
yeah, and that's true, especially about something like the creeds. And I think that is also lost when you're only trying to go forward with the church. And that was the project in the last 20 years of evangelicalism, is trying to go forward. And so, um, yeah, I think that's a felt need, but also just a reality of importance regardless. And I think because there's also the big thing which we haven't talked about is the individualism of evangelicalism versus the corporate nature of the high church. And
Go on, speak on that because I don't know if I agree.
so going to church, like I'm tapped into the music, is about your personal experience. Now you do say you like to see the people around you, um, but what is God saying to you? And what are you, as opposed to like, are we, um, or if you have an opportunity to confess sin like corporately, or to say a creed together. These are two simple examples. But you have everybody in there saying, I'm a sinner before God. Like, you can sing that, or you can not, and the music covers it up. But what if the music's all gone, but then you hear everybody say, forgive me, uh, for Lord, forgive me for what I've done and what I've left undone. I've not loved my neighbor as myself. Like, and everybody's saying it. Or I believe in God the Father. I believe in Jesus Christ, that he died and rose again. I believe in the Holy Spirit. I believe in the Catholic Church. I believe in the communion of saints, and I believe in the forgiveness of sins. It's like everybody's saying, I believe in, like, you can sing that every now and then, or what, Hillsong like did that Creed song of, 2016 or whatever, but it's like, um,
But that's not incidental either, though. That Hillsong made
oh no,
that.
that was part of the liturgy, the start of liturgy, that 100%, that was my point earlier, or way
Yeah,
back when we were talking about that, yeah. And so, um, I think that, but again, like, you're still putting that weight on the music to provide that. And so it's like, the Creed now is out. The Newsboys picked that up and did it too, but now it's like the fad is over, you know,
yeah.
and now,
I my disagreement comes because I don't think the music does the. I mean, like you're right. When we sing together, there is an encouragement of corporate worship. But what I was thinking of when I said I disagree was small groups. Small groups, more than anything, like are really good at fostering communities, especially in mega churches.
well, I think that's Luke Thompson's biggest grief that he shared a few weeks ago, was missing that type of, the that is something that's not like present, in the same way that it's built in now to the structure, whether it was Sunday school that then morphed into small group, um, that he kind of was, it sounded like he was saying that that's good. There's a lot of good to that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna convert or what I'm gonna convert to. Probably not, but if I do, I'll definitely miss the small groups because that's like I said, most times in the sermons I'll zone out. But when we're gathered at the group of 6 or 7, diving into scriptures, oh, those were my favorite times because yeah,
What's
it's
interesting? Yeah, I when you talk, like, I've never been a great Bible reader. I've never been the best sermons are not what, like, I would show up for the music, obviously, but like what I love doing with sermons is being like, what song goes with this sermon?
mm,
Like, that's how I'm like, that's my process, is like, and getting to do that again has been a real joy. And um but it does come back down to that. Let's see here. I've been to mass where the homily was just been struggled to get through, but I'm able to sort of come back into worship through the readings, the creed, the prayers, the hymns. Yeah, all of it. Um, yeah, and there are, as I've learned, I remember in 2011, I asked a guy, really quiet, really artistic guy that had started coming to our church, and I asked him, what do you think would be good? Like, can you give me some constructive feedback? And he said, I wish there was more time to just kind of like contemplate. And for the guy that was like ready for like the next like drum beat to start, I was like, that was never gonna be on my radar. But it gave me the freedom to be like, I've not known kind of how I feel about guitar solos in church, or like these kind of instrumental breaks sometimes or whatever. But part of me was like, I'm gonna be okay with this for that reason, or that there's gonna be like this long extended, like if there was a song like that song Holy Spirit by Carrie Job, and um, like there was this it's like an 8-minute song, and there's this long section, and it was just like drums, da 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 da, and just like going drums and bass going, and I just was like totally okay with that because I was thinking about that guy and what he said to me, not because I wanted to like showcase something, but because I was like, oh, this provides space. Um, but again, if you're depending on music for that, like there's also interesting thing that I've been involved in this group that I'm with. They were like, Christian, let's do like can we get like a written order of worship because I like to know what's coming next. And in the pro presenter world, screen words on screen world,
Pro presenter, my nemesis.
Yeah, were you a finger clicker? Yeah, so like
that was my job. I couldn't sing or play instruments, but I was there for you guys, getting the lyrics up.
Oh, I love you. So like I've pushed back against pro presenter. Like we have like these people at our church that have means, and they're like, Christian, we can get a computer. We can buy the subscription's only like $200 a year. It's like it's not a big deal. It's like hold on, like the amount of complexity that brings into the service is like, and I've been 100% complex. Like, hey, Pro Presenter can control lights, it can control the click, it can control the track.
Yeah,
I've
the light.
The MIDI cues, and so like I know how to do all that. Like I'm like, but there's this really weird spirit, man, of like disunity in that. And you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're dependent of trying to be with the band, and like I mean some of that stuff's been fixed through the whole MIDI control with all that stuff, but at the same time, like what we've been doing is I'm trying to kill this note. What we've been doing is like literally screen mirroring my note that has the whole liturgy in it. And then we just all are scrolling it. We're all doing, and the chord charts, all the songs with the chords are on there, so that everybody in the room is on the same thing.
That's interesting.
And then you can see what's coming next. But we also have a little paper handout that's just like printer paper, but it's like got a little kind of form. Because some people were like, I want to anticipate so I can kind of prepare what's happening next. And liturgy allows you to, like a formal liturgy, and even in the Baptist church, if you wanted to, like if I think back to our old bulletins, and it would have the hymn, it would have the the author or whatever, the number, and then it would have who's singing the special. Sally's singing the special today, and it's one of the last specials that I ever did was my wife and I sang "Mighty to Save" probably in like 2007.
When that dropped, good times. In the late 2000s.
And so like there's the pro presenter culture. Like you can kind of, if you go to a church long enough, you kind of know the simple liturgy of a song, a welcome, 2 songs, announcements,
offering,
whatever. Yeah, so like, and that's fine. But yeah, like if you're like trying to like prepare, okay, so the song is about the gospel. I say this is a gospel song, and then we sing about the gospel and say now we're going to confess sin. So you're like preparing your mind for that, and then like what I'm planning to do for all of Lent is there's this from the book that I've been using. There's a Lenten lament, and we're just going to read that every Sunday during Lent. And this was also another thing about the rhythm and the church calendar that I started to pick up on, was because when we started honoring most of Holy Week, was like, well, there's certain songs that I actually only want to sing during Holy Week, like the song "Lead Me to the Cross." Like, yeah, like I can just take you there, Teo. Like every time.
Literally, that's what you have to say. Just say the title and I'm there.
But that song is a Good Friday song.
That's a great Good Friday song.
And so like I only wanted to play that every year, and my church to know that was coming, and that they participate in that because it's part of this culture, but it's our, and that all broke because I broke. I didn't have the integrity to build that to build on top of that, and that's I have to take responsibility for that, but that was like my vision for that in reference to like looking at the church calendar and looking at modern worship and looking at like this stuff was just all like, and it's not. I
How
wasn't
do
doing.
you, how do you think the church incorporating the church calendar into the liturgical
What do you? I
year?
think
How do you think that's going to help Protestant churches be less individualistic?
yeah. So um, it's a corporate thing. Like, and here's the real crux of it is that it submitting yourself to practicing that is so countercultural because it interferes with sports, it interferes with whatever else is going on. It's like, do I want to
WrestleMania,
what wrestling is that what you say?
WrestleMania is in a couple of weeks, so that's on my mind. Yeah, interrupts.
Yeah,
Interrupts.
so like um but like we're gonna do this together, and the Protestant thing is like, oh, here's this cool experience for me as an individual. Oh, I want to get into the church calendar. Oh, you do you, but that's what I'm gonna do. That's not what that's designed for because it's. I mean, worship is a based on the Trinity is based on the community, and so like, we. Oh, here he comes. So
Good.
we are doing this together. He had to get in. What do you guys say? Hey man.
Hey guys.
Good to
First
see
off,
you.
good morning, Tayo. Good evening, Christian.
I'm
Secondly,
crazy.
Christian, way to go for all the hard work you've been doing. So I think it's aside for the content, which is good. I think it's just a good example for people to see that perseverance and consistency pay off. So way to go, honestly. And lastly, just because I'm about to get into work, it's election day, so I'm it's off, but I'm still going to work right now. That when David goes to, you were talking about music not carrying the whole thing, where it's intense for music to carry the whole service. Again, in Judaism, it's a little different, but when David is in his tent, so to speak, before we have the temple, and he doesn't know what to do with the ark.
Mm,
The ark finally came back, right? This is
right.
the desert, the temple. I mean, it then gets taken by a different group. It's brought back, so he finally has this temple with him, this ark with him, and he feels uncomfortable. He's like, it's in the tent next to me. I don't know what to do with this thing. And he goes to the Levites and tells them, sing. Like, I don't have a structure yet. I need to respond. I need to do something to the sacred right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we have in Psalms about singing to God a new song.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to also think about what that means. Like, there wasn't anything written in front of these Levites. David is just saying, express yourself. Just react to this. So music is an extremely powerful tool. It's the language of the soul in a certain sense. So I think and to those who can and do play music or compose music like you, Christian, it's a big responsibility. It's a great power, as Uncle Ben says. And I I appreciate you also talking about it and discussing it. But I think music could carry for a very long way.
Yeah.
Obviously, structure, content, like it matters, but it goes a long way.
Also, I find it interesting that in your that story, it's a response. It's a response to beauty, a response to being overwhelmed by the presence of God, and that maps on exactly to the way music is treated in Protestant evangelical churches. It's uh
It's
this is the sacred time that was
it's the only sacrament in a way.
yeah.
It
There's a psychological component to it, which I don't think it makes it unfair, but people need to realize that there's a theory called enchantment theory, and in this theory, they were discussing how if we took Republicans and Democrats, male and female. We don't say who's who. We just put this whole group in a club and we put on some good beats and we let them dance for like 2 hours.
Mhm.
Then we start having a political discussion. I already grooved with you. Your body and mine were moving together at the same beat. It's very hard for me now to be like, oh, you're the enemy, because we've already connected on a much deeper level.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, if Christian says like, I want to hear another like a bass, there's something very deep about that bass that, like, everyone could connect to that rhythm. Everyone very quickly to feel on the same page, and we long for that. So you're talking about I'm in a room of 60,000 people, or when I see these Christians babbling about Gyra. But it's interesting because it's like they're so compassionate about just like, you understand that's not what that word means. But either way, you see it's in the room. You just see everyone is so into it. Everyone's connected, and God is in that place. Whether you're calling him, it doesn't matter at that point what the name is. He understands, right? He could pierce through that. He knows our intention. So I think it's it is really beautiful. It is very powerful, and don't not that you are abandoning that or leaving that alone, but I would say don't definitely keep on cultivating that talent of yours, Christian.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's more about I'm not, like, I have my tools. Like, I have what I have. I have what I've developed and been given, and um yeah, so like I think I'll probably butcher this with the Old Testament here. But the idea of tabernacle and temple and wild versus city, even like I think like I think the rock music is like, it's a way, even when David got the ark back and he danced
Dancing in front of it,
undignified, like there's a place, but that was like an honest response, which was the same thing that you were just talking about the Levites, and to the goodness, and yet that's not like the everyday, or that's not like the general practice, I guess, maybe.
yeah, but that is so. There is the prayer of Hannah, Saul's mother, and she is barren, and she goes to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle at the time in Shiloh, and she goes to pray, and she prays to God, but it says her lips were moving, but no voice was heard. And Eli, the high priest at the time, thinks she's drunk because no one prays that way, I guess, at that time. And he calls her out, but it all works out. But there too, there was this spontaneous prayer to God, and like here, he's seeing it from the side as it's not dignified, right? She like looks drunk. So from the outside, for us, it seems someone having a jamming session seems like strange. There's no language over here. Or let's say a good example would be using jazz, right?
Mhm.
You always see, like, if you look at the crowd, you'll always see one guy like looking at everyone else, being like, are we all faking it right now? Really?
I don't get it.
Right, exactly. But there's something there about it being unscripted, unstructured, where like I said about the Sea of Reeds, when Moses and the Israelites just burst out into song, they're overwhelmed by like what they just saw, what they just experienced. Same thing with the song of Deborah the prophetess. You have a lot of, I mean, these are also very, very ancient as far as the Bible also goes. Whatever, we don't have to go into Bible criticism. All right, I got to bust a move, guys.
Hey, it was great.
Catch you guys later.
Awesome.
Just a quick plug for the Song of Deborah. On Grill Country, they're doing the Judges Bible study, and that they had a great episode on that.
That's cool. I think, yeah, so it's almost like, don't stop going to church camp, like but you know, the whole trope of when the kids get back from church camp, they're like trying to bring like that undignified stuff to Sunday morning, and it's like all these people don't care. But like the rhythm of life, like that's like coming in contact with that goodness that Kezi's talking about, and it's like um and having like a response to that, and then though you have to go back, you know, and kind of I don't know if that's all uh going up to the mountain, coming down from the mountain, like and and there's different levels of that, but I don't know.
I think that actually maps out to your the experience of going to a conference like the summit, the
Yeah,
Symbolic summit.
yeah.
Is go on.
Well, so when you go to church camp with, you know, 1,000 teenagers and and adults that are trying to become teenagers again for a week, like, and then you come back to your church and you're like, man, these people just don't get it. Um, but maybe like the mom who's there that like looks off and distant, like miscarried that week, you know, or like maybe maybe the old couple that doesn't really get the music but is happy to see the kids, but they don't really understand it, but they're not like clapping along and they don't even know the words, but they may not even be smiling, but they're still happy on the inside and you just don't know it because Sunday morning is kind of it's it's not like the ark's been there for, you know, the ark's been there. It's not uh just been discovered, but maybe for those teenagers at church camp, they just like came into contact with the ark, you know. Uh,
Yeah, it's. I remember there was a during the revival at my secondary school. Uh, Billy Graham's son was doing rock. What was it? Was Rock Thorough? That's what it was called, and it was this evangelism thing that he did across the UK, and we all went to it, and the experience was amazing. But then we went back to our church on Sunday, and there was sort of like a little bit of a sadness that it wasn't what we experienced at Rock Thorough wasn't what we experienced on every Sunday, and there can be like a push to try to recreate that, which almost never goes well.
that's my point. I don't think Sunday is designed for that. Like, I think it can happen on a Sunday. I think it could happen anytime. But but yeah, then you start trying to manipulate something instead of respond to something. And and that is just the someone mentioned it in the comments way back like about the charismatic movement or something, but that's not they're not the only people guilty of that. Like that is and then you start to try to develop your self-worth as a worship leader on if you can conjure that 52 weeks out of the
Mm.
year. That's not healthy either. And but that's kind of the expectation. Um, and so then you start depending upon perfect music to do that heavy lifting for you. Um, so there's a lot there, and obviously not going to figure it all out. Still don't have it figured out. That's just where I'm at on my journey, you know. And
Uh,
I don't know. I
it's
probably need to land this plane because like I've got to work in the morning. But
you've you've done a 4 hour live stream, Christian. That's impressive.
uh, well, I needed a conversation partner because I was struggling by myself. I can tell you, I don't have the Luke Thompson stream of thought thing down.
Yeah, I told all of you that that do the talking head type videos, I'm so impressed with, because it takes me about 10 minutes to try to form a sentence that I'm happy with, that conveys what is I'm trying to say. So the external processes in this corner do a lot of heavy lifting for me, because then you guys say, like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about, was struggling to phrase.
Yeah.
Church does that. Like, events like Chino does that. Church is faith, Chino is fellowship. Both are hugely important.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think, fellowship happens at church. But like making that act of like making it an act of faith, I think there's something to that. Like approaching it that way. Hmm.
I was also thinking the variety. I love the variety. Like, I'm secretly hoping when we get to heaven, I can go from the Jamaican church to the Ghanaian church to the
Hmm.
Australian church and worship. It's, I think what we're both pointing at, the amount of weight being put on just music in general. I think it's a good thing to discuss, but also we don't want to push it too far to where we stifle the diversity that's in Christian worship, which
Oh
I think
yeah.
is the strength of it.
Yeah, and I mean I'm pretty white bread. Yeah, and so it's a critique of a section,
Mm,
and so and a section of a section probably. So I just the one I've been a part of, and you know, but you know, honestly, the reason I can go 4 hours is because this conversation has
yeah,
been it's been inside of me for the most part for like 7 years. So
that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I could sense that there was a lot I could gain from you, and you, or or a lot of the references that you make, I'm like, yes, I was a part of that. I understood that reference to quote Captain America.
yeah, man,
All right,
love
bro,
you.
it's great talking to you, man.
You too. Thanks for going the distance with me, man. And to Pete Kayfabe, Kezi, and uh, mostly not working, and Neil. And if I and who's the first guy that was here with us? Mills and Brad RB. Thanks for the hang. We'll see what happens next time, and I'll give some updates from Symbolic World. So, all right, y'all have a good night, good day, and everything.
Bye, yo.
Bye, dude.